Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of what if Deku had both all for one and one for all? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Chapter 1, Pilot. My name is Izuku Midoriya, and my dream is to be a superhero. I want to be somebody for people to rely on, to look up to, and to believe in, just like who All Might is to me. But to do that, I need a quirk, or rather, an amazing ability that'd bring my dreams to life. Super strength, super speed, hardening, telekinesis, the abilities that have appeared in our world were endless. Fire. Lots of fire. If there was one thing Izuku Midoriya could note from the scene, it was the intense heat that burned the area. Pure, blinding red and orange glowed through the night sky. He wouldn't be surprised if the rest of the area crumbled and burned down before the sun rose. My world came shattering to the ground when the doctor told me I was quirkless. My dreams were crushed and I couldn't find anyone, not even my own mother, to bring me the support I need, the words I desperately needed to hear to save my passion before it was lost. You can become a hero. He held his ground in an alleyway located from a branching city, miles from Hosa City. His outfit once again ripped open despite the upgrades he and May Hatsum worked on. Sweat dribbled from his skin, battling the heat as he struggled to remain calm and focused. It took years of resentment from my peers and grown-ups to keep this dream from fading. Thinking about it now, I'd like to believe that I'm just very lucky, to be honest. Had I not met All Might, taken his training, and finally received his power, one for all.
Come.
That was a joke, and he knew it. Really, he was terrified. His mind running 1,000 miles an hour. After all, he knew who was after him.
Him and
I wouldn't have my very own quirk appear in the first place. It was going to be hard, but I was very happy nonetheless. After all, my dream of becoming the greatest hero was slowly starting to become a reality. Deku, get back here and face me, you goddamn copycat. Flakes of fire blew in the wind, but that wasn't enough to distract Tomura Shigaraki from his mission. He stood on top of debris of a once-standing building, long since evacuated. Truth be told, he was mad, if the constant scratching on the underside of his neck was any indicator. Izuku, Midoriya, he whispered hoarsely, his neck slowly turning red from the constant scratching, as his shoulders starting shaking. You done brat. You DMN cheater.
can't even stand to face me.
Stealing the bait and making a break for it, his scratching stopped. I'll break him. Tomura, Kurogyari, coming through his own warp gate, phased next to the man in question, arms firmly behind his back. Perhaps it'd be wiser to return back to base. Other heroes are making their way to this location as we speak. Tisk. If it wasn't fast enough, Tomura scratched his neck even faster, before finally blowing a fuse. No. On cue, 3 Numu of different shapes and sizes appeared. Some with wings, others with elongated arms. But one that stood out was an incredibly buff, all-black Numu that stood like an ape, almost like the same Numu that attacked USJ before. Tomura pointed towards the streets. Enough games. Find them. Instantly, they launched out. Tomura, I insist that we head back. Going so far just for a kid is ridiculous. Tomura turned his body slightly towards Kurogyari. Any further, and we will really risk exposure. Kurogyari, if you don't stop nagging, I will kill you on the spot. Tomura's intense glare held no room for argument. Kurogyari stood tense as Tomura pulled out 2 pictures, one of Izuku Midoriya, and another of him and… What are you talking about, Deku-kun? I think a quirk like that is super amazing. Ha. Ha. A weak voice was next to Izuku, and he looked down grimly at the figure next to him, his head pounding. Uraraka-sen, oh my god. Laid next to him was Ochako Uraraka, the girl that he's known since the first day at Yuta High. Her hero outfit was battered and torn up, and her body was limp. However, the worst of her features was her arms, as patches of her skin were decayed as muscle was shown. Just looking at it made Izuku feel pure, cold rage towards his enemy, towards Tamura with his dreadful quirk. It wasn't unheard of for a villain to capture somebody close to a hero, just to spite said hero. Still, it was rare, and, especially for both Izuku and Uraraka who were still in Udata High, it was not expected. Trying to kidnap Uraraka, just to send him a message, made him rivet with disgust. At the same time, an unbridled amount of fear rose within him. Will Tamura do it again? And with whom? Another one of his classmates? Him, mom, of all people, could be the next target. Deku.
Ah.
Izuku let out a sharp gasp. Was he mumbling again? Now was not the time. He moved immediately to her side as she tried regaining consciousness. Uraraka-sen, please don't move too much, You really came for me, huh? That's good. Ochako started to speak, and Izuku immediately cut his words short. Even though I told you that it was a trap, you really are stubborn sometimes. Her body tensed as another wave of pain came over her. If that's, of course, I'd come back for you. There's no way I would just sit around, and Ochako's eyes started watering up as she looked away. You've already done so much for me, Deku. Her eyes closed as faint memories arose. The entrance exam, battle training, and his support during the tournament being prime examples. But Ochako shook her head. This time, you should have let the pros handle saving me. She lightly glared at him, choking any words that Izuku might have had to say. If this keeps up, you're really going to get yourself killed. Uraraka stiffened after saying this, almost out of regret. Izuku froze up. While she wasn't wrong, this wasn't like Uraraka. She was never this pessimistic, or, at least, never in front of him. He would love to blame Tamura for it, but he was smarter than that. Uraraka, Izuku tried to speak, but Uraraka shook her head. No, don't apologize,
I'm sorry.
That didn't come out the way I wanted it to. Izuku blinked at her change of tone. Now come on, we have to find a way to GHH. Izuku immediately snapped out of it and held Uraraka down. Wait, hold on. Your wounds there. Ah, that's right. Uraraka winced, passing a glance at her damaged arms. I really can't move like this.
Deku.
Huh? I figured, looking down at the injuries themselves, his mind rattled once more. At any rate, the villains will reach this spot and catch us. I could carry her, but I'll risk injuring her if I use one. For all. After saying one for all, almost instinctively his mind rested on his other quirk. All for one. Uraraka-sen, please. Teach me how your quirk works. Young man, Yagi Tashinori, or rather well known as All Might, began. I was hoping to talk to you about this at some other point of time, perhaps when you held a better grip at using one for all, but seeing your new quirk in development, that is a route I simply cannot take. What are you talking about, All Might? Izuku spoke with bated breath, unnerved with how serious his tone is. Your new quirk, it already has a name. All for one. It's a quirk that gives you control over other quirks. Once you claim somebody else's quirk, that quirk is yours to keep. No strings attached. Or, at least, as far as I know, despite how powerful this quirk sounded, Izuku couldn't help but feel uneasy with All Might's conviction. That's amazing, but Izuku carefully tried to word what he was going to say next. How do you already know about this quirk? Does somebody have it as well?
Who?
Izuku Midoriya, your cunning once again surprises me. I'll be frank, Midoriya. Your quirk is the same as my arch-nemesis, the anti-symbol of peace. Izuku's eyes slowly widened at the news, as Yagi continues. He refers to himself by the name of the quirk, All for One. He is an incredibly powerful foe. He was the one who gave me. He pulled up his shirt, revealing his scar. This nasty wound, right here. Yagi finished. Izuku reeled back at the revelation and tensed at the implications. No way, then this quirk is the same as All Might's sworn enemy. To think I'd have a quirk like this suddenly appear, and then Izuku's eyes widened. Wait, does All Might despise me now because of this quirk? Izuku almost felt the need to jump out of his seat. All Might suddenly held up a hand, cutting the boy's apology short. Midoriya-kun, I can already tell what you're going to say. I'll be clear to say that, despite this new quirk you have, my opinion of you has not changed. All Might said proudly, and Izuku's face turned into that of comedic shock. Did All Might just read my mind? He exclaimed in his head, as Yagi continued. Indeed, with this new quirk, you'll turn out to be quite the disciple. One for All's power will crystallize like no other. Ha 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 way. Yagi promptly puked out blood after his bellowed laughter, causing Izuku to panic. Still though, it's hard to believe how differently your quirk works compared to All for One's air. Yagi quickly noticed how difficult it'll be to keep referring his enemy by his quirk's name, my nemesis's quirk. Young Midoriya, care to explain to me again how your quirk activates? Oh, of course. Although it's, a bit hard to word out. I'll try to explain the best I can. I feel like I'd just be taking everyone's individuality. Everyone will hate me. Uraraka-sen. Izuku's tone had a bit of command into it, snapping Ochako into attention. Why, yeah? She immediately replied, and the tips of Izuku's ears started heating up. Do you trust me? Izuku asked, and Ochako became confused. Deku, why are you asking that all of the sudden? Because I will be using my quirk, his eyes shone with confidence, to heal you back to health. Ochako became surprised at his statement. Can you really? She began, but realizing there was no time for doubt, she shook her head. Slowly, Ochako's face turned confident, with a light blush and a bold smile to boot. I don't get it, but I trust you, Deku-kun. Please take care of me. All right, I will. Deku's face also turned red, but for different reasons. That's not true at all. Deku-kun, don't you know how the saying goes? Something like, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, right? One for All's power was personified by a single, glowing star, growing stronger with each passing holder, shining bright in a void of empty space. All for One was like a vast galaxy of stars, dim and glowing in the distance, just ways away for one to simply reach and grab hold, only to individually shine bright with each quirk acquired. Yagi turned surprised as Izuku explained. Notice the stark differences and parallels to how each variant of All for One worked. He began to wonder if the way his nemesis has acquired his powers, by forcibly removing their quirk, and with it their strength, was just the easier route he took simply for being a villain. Or maybe Izuku just had his own way of acquiring quirks that didn't harm his peers in the slightest. Izuku's way, however, was undoubtedly harder. The challenge, however, was much more fitting for somebody that was growing to be a great hero. So, the way my quirk works, or rather, the way I make it work, is like this. He brought out one of his notebooks, titled Hero Analysis Volume 13, one that was battered and burned by Bakugo back before he made it to Yuta. I've been writing books like these ever since I've wanted to be a hero thanks to you, I might add. All Might. The hero in question was simply unfazed, so Izuku continued. Anyway, I've been writing about heroes for so long that I've almost memorized every page up to this point. And even now, I'm writing about my classmates and their quirks, their abilities, and I feel their potential just buzzing in my brain. I'm not sure this relates to how your quirk activates, young Midoriya. All Might begins to wonder if Izuku is beginning to mumble again at this point, and Izuku shakes his head. No, I haven't got there yet. When my quirk activates, I just think about the page of the hero I want to be and just rip the page right out of the book. Rip. Just like this. Yagi tries to interpret what he's saying, but ends up ripping one of Izuku's pages in his notebook. Izuku's body shakes at the sound, and tears immediately form in his eyes. No, not physically. All Might. Izuku cries out, snapping his book back into his arms, and Yagi, realizing that he screwed up something fierce, starts sweating. Crap, my bad. I'm really sorry, Midoriya-kun. All Might furiously apologizes before rubbing his neck. Really, this quirk is incredibly important to understand, young man. Please understand how important this is. Right, I'm sorry. In the end, it was Izuku that ended up apologizing before he glances at the page that was ripped out. A smile ended up forming in his lips. This'll be perfect. Izuka showed the page to All Might. All Might, can you see who this is? Yagi glanced at the page and noticed the figure's angry expression and the way the costume seemed to explode in different directions. Explode, huh? This is Katsuki Bakugo-san, isn't it? Yeah, that's right. This is Kaken. He and I were childhood friends for the longest time. Izuka twiddled with his thumbs as the page rested on his knee. I've followed him ever since we met, and he ended up with such an awesome quirk. I couldn't help but be awestruck at his ability, so I memorized his ability and wrote it down. Wrote down the applications, the raw power it could bring, the source of where it comes from, so on and so on. Izuka then held out his arm, and thanks to that, Izuka's hand started crackling as small explosions harmlessly lifted off his palm. I have an easier time using Kaken's explosion quirk, more than anyone else's quirk, I believe. Oh. Yagi marveled at the display of the quirk that didn't belong to Izuku. Before looking up, why don't you use it more often if it's so easy to use? Izuka's expression turned grim. A long story. He shook his head. But anyway, like I said before, I just ripped the page of the book inside my head. Then the quirk will appear. There's a few more complications after that, but that's the gist of how all for one works for me. Haha. Stressing one part of his statement, he wraps up with an awkward laugh as Yagi processes all this info. You've done so much for me, Uraraka-san. At least, let me repay the favor. Briefly, an image of Recovery Girl passed Izuka's thoughts as the page he held for her inside, Hero Analysis Volume 13, came into his mind, with her quirk and all its features. Grabbing hold of Uraraka's shoulders, he brought her up into a sitting position, despite her protests or her condition. Deku? What are you? Wordlessly, he moved closer toward Uraraka, or rather, leaned closer toward her face. Their noses briefly touched before. Izuku kissed Ochako on the lips. For a moment, Izuka stayed there, as the soft crackle of fire was the only sound both heard. Ochako's eyes were wide in shock, her mind unable to think, let alone back out of the situation. After what felt like forever, Izuku pulled away and noticed the green aura around his partner, her wounds healing quickly. He breathed a sigh of relief. Thank goodness. His eyes opened as he glanced at a blushing, almost furious Ochako who trembled ever so slightly. Only then did he realize his actions. He kissed Ochako. It's not It's not what it looks like, Uraraka-san. I didn't kiss you. For no reason. That was my first kiss, Deku. You big idiot. Ochako was blushing mad at this point, and only then did Izuku realize his awful sin. You? I'm sorry. Terribly sorry. Terribly, utterly sorry. Deku apologized profusely, bowing every time. It was the only way I could heal you. Please forgive me. Deku, you'd better wait, heal? Ochako passed a glance at herself to find out that, indeed, her wounds have healed. Wait, so that was Recovery Girl's quirk, yes. Izuku muttered, still blushing over the incident. It was the only quirk I could think of that could heal you in a short instant. I could have kissed your wounds, but I didn't want to risk not healing them and only causing you more pain. Recovery Girl mentioned that kissing the person on the lips would have the same effect as kissing the entire body. Before Izuku could go back to mumble mode, he snapped out of it and bowed one more time. I meant nothing ill towards you, Uraraka-san. Honest. Deku-kun, that's amazing. Deku stammered from the total 180 Ochako has made. Wait, really? Deku was taken aback from the sudden praise. Yeah, you could really save a lot of people using that quirk too. Uraraka went back to her cheering self, and Deku immediately hid from embarrassment. Just don't kiss everyone on the lips, yeah? You, Uraraka-san? Deku cried out, but immediately went quiet and still when he heard the sound of flapping wings. Ochako also took notice of Izuku's sudden behavior change. She quickly held her breath per Izuku's request, only to hear the sound herself. Flap, 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 flap. Get ready. Izuku whispered roughly, and both of them stood up, getting into fighting poses. Flap, slap, slap, flap. Izuku took the surroundings before looking up. Okay. You've convinced me, Deku-kun. Teach me how to improve my quirk. Please. Seriously. Once again Tamura was found scratching his neck. Dim and near useless party members. Shouldn't one of them have found the brats already? Before Kurogiri could say anything, his instincts suddenly started screaming for him to move and, without thinking, he phased him and Tamura away from the debris they were standing on, right before. Smash. Izuku leveled the ground with a supersized punch, leaving a crater behind. I had a feeling you'd show up sooner or later, Tamura began, before glaring hard at the newcomer. You then all might wanna be. Izuku stepped out of the crater, calmly assessing his opponents, before a soft thump landed next to him. Tamura looked shocked. You, but how? Those debuffs should have never worn off. Izuku smiled, knowing who was next to him. Would you like to know, huh? Ochako exclaimed loudly, before moving her arms together in a motion Tamura didn't recognize from the tournament footage. Release. Tamura immediately braced for a large car slam towards his side in an astounding speed, something which he was not prepared for as he flew towards a neighboring wall. That was for turning my arms into a horror movie. You bin brute. Ochako spoke afterwards, before preparing into a fight stance. Get ready, Deku. I think I've really crossed the line this time. Right. Deku simply spoke, but his mind was focused on keeping Ochako safe at all times. These two villains, while nothing like Stain in terms of killer's intent, still held up as villains. He had to be absolutely careful, else they fall into a trap and risk. The sound of metal crumbling apart distracted his thought process, as the car that entrapped Tamura began rusting and, eventually, decayed on the spot. Slowly, Tamura was in view, once more. You done kids. I'm going to enjoy this. Tamura walked over the decayed mess, one of his arms limp and lifeless as he walked to Kurogiri's side once more, strangely silent over the whole ordeal. Noma. He finally spoke, and both heroes tensed at the name. Two masses appeared, and Izuku immediately assessed their looks and strengths, only to rest his eyes on one of the Nomas that looked exactly like the one at the USJ. A sharp chill ran up his spine. That one looks like the one All Might fought back at the USJ. We need to. Hey, Deku-kun? Izuku immediately looked at Ochako, at his nickname being called. What is it? Izuku nervously replied, tense at the situation. And only two are here. Tamura started scratching his neck with the arm that he had still functioning. I'll kill you both, I swear it. You won't leave here alive. Think we can do the thing we've been practicing on for a while now? She asked, and Izuku's mind wondered what she meant, only for a little bit, until he snapped in realization. Yeah. Let's do it, Uraraka-san. Izuku, with rekindled confidence, shared a battered smile with the girl. I like the enthusiasm. Get ready. Ochako held her arms out, and so did Izuku. Damn, and mindless mobs won't stop talking. Nomu, kill them. Tamura gave the order, and both Nomas launched. Yagi could be seen, looking out the window after his conversation with Izuku. His mind was still thinking about the potential his disciple had as the symbol of peace, especially with the new quirk he had acquired, despite their initial interactions. Young Midoriya, we haven't even begun your training as the symbol of peace, and I've already seen a bright future that rests with you. If this school deserves a quirk as powerful as yours, it's you. Okay, focus on the paper cut. Spread the feeling throughout my body. She looked at herself and grinned as her body turned light pink. Pink lines curled throughout her frame. This is it, right, Deku? Still, the road will be tough regardless. I pray the day when villains aim for you stays as far away as possible. Despite the 10 months you took working to receive One for All, it will only get harder from here. One for All. Full cowling. Izuku mumbled under his breath, and bites of electricity danced off his body. Along with that, zero gravity. Those strands of electricity became pink, as his body glowed a pinkish hue as well. But I have no doubt that you will succeed in every endeavor you encounter. I hope, in your hero academia, you find the support you need, the strength to fight, and the drive to keep improving both of your powers. And I hope that one day, it's ready. Let's do this, Uraraka-san. You can show me what it means to go. Improvised special move. Both Izuku and Uraraka shouted out loud. Gravity field. Plus ultra. Chapter 2, Crossing the Line, Part 1. It's hard to imagine how much of a change I've been through. Meeting All Might, taking on his 10-month All-American training plan, and then finally inheriting his quirk. It really shines in comparison to the rest of life before now. My whole life I've been told that I was quirkless, that I was a loser, a nobody, a wannabe hero. But above all else, the nickname that Kaken gave me, Deku, seemed to have stung the most. Whoa, Kaken. I didn't know you can read. One of Kaken's random buddies exclaimed. Sure, I can. And you know what this says, Kaken replied, pointing at the bucket labeled for Izuku Midoriya. It says Izuku's full name, but the very first letter can be shortened to Deku. With a sheet-eating grin, he looked over to Izuku, which had a smile of admiration towards Katsuki, and Deku is also another way of saying useless. Surprised at the sudden jab, Izuku lowered his head. Hey, that's pretty mean, Kaken.
What?
It's in your name, so it has to be true. Katsuki pushed anyway, rallying the rest of his buddies to do so as well. Yeah, Kaken's right, Deku. Since when is he ever wrong? One of them said. But Izuku motioned for them to stop. Yeah, what he said. What's wrong? Deku can't handle the truth. Another one of the kids laughed, and in turn they all laughed, making Izuku feel worse about himself. All right, class, can anyone come up and read the next sentence? A nameless teacher taught our class as she looked over to Katsuki. Kaken, would you do the honor? At first, he huffed and got up, but then heard the excited whispers of the other kids. Oh boy, Kaken's going to read the next part of the story. Gosh, Kaken's amazing. I'll just embarrass myself if I go up there. Way to go, Kaken. Kaken had a tick mark growing on the side of his head before grinning. Sure thing, teach. But call me Katsuki from now on, K? The word Kaken is... Turning to the class, his voice got louder. Getting on my nerves, he exclaimed. Even if he was only 6 and had the ferociousness of an angry chihuahua, his words rang crystal clear to the other kids. Call him Kaken one more time, and face the wrath of the exploding boy. Oh, of course, Katsuki-chan. And please, use your inside voice from now on, okay? Tisk. He clicked his tongue with dissatisfaction when he heard Katsuki-chan. Regardless, he made his way to the board as the kids watched him. However, Izuku had conflicted feelings about the matter. Kaken is what I called him when we were first friends, before the quirks and the peers showed up. We hung out with each other, just us two. We'd always explore our neighborhood, challenge each other by playing heroes and villains with our toys, came home late together. We had amazing times together before school started. At least, that's what I liked to believe. If I gave up that name now, I'd lose the only real connection to the Katsuki Bakugo I knew in my early years. My best friend, Kaken. Darn it, Deku. This is the last time I'm gonna say this. Katsuki roared, his small hand crackling with explosions as he looked down at Izuku. Izuku, himself, was scratched up and charred from the quirk, but his face still looked determined, even though tears were running down his face by the gallon. They were at a secluded part of the school playground, where teachers would have to walk out to see properly. This was the spot Katsuki decided to bring Izuku over to after saying Kaken in public, despite Katsuki's declaration in class. The rest of the kids listening froze and reacted, as if Deku said a bad word. Did you hear that? He said the K word again. Oh no, Deku's gonna be in so much trouble. Which, from one's perspective, didn't seem to be too far from the truth. Back in the corner, Katsuki grinded his teeth. Do not call me Kaken again. You hear me? I'll make you regret it, he made his threat clear. And no, I don't wanna. I could remember how I felt that day, both scared and determined. My legs were shaking, and I was terrified of what was coming next, but this was the one thing I absolutely could not lose. Lest I want to break the very hope of my childhood friend returning. That's it. Prepare to be cooked. Deku, he reached out for Izuku, and the boy backed away to a tree as he approached, until Katsuki Bakugo, another teacher yelled out, freezing the hot-headed boy before he could attempt to get Deku. What is the meaning of this? Bullying young Midoriya on school grounds? Teach. Katsuki exclaimed, but the teacher was having none of it. Go to the principal's office, young man.
Now.
Katsuki glared at Izuku, while said useless boy was crying tears of joy. Katsuki huffed before started walking toward the school. And you, young Midoriya. The crying boy froze up as the teacher looked at him. I suggest that whatever you did to anger Katsuki, you don't do it again. You should know better than this, young man. Why yes, I will. Izuku said that, knowing full well that he was lying, still determined on not giving his friend's nickname up. The teacher nodded, before heading back inside the building, as Izuku looked down to the ground, preparing for what was going to come after school after Katsuki got out of trouble. Oddly enough, Kaken never came back to hurt me for getting him in trouble like that. Even afterwards, when I continued using his nickname, he threatened me like usual, but never got to the point like before where he'd hurt me. A few months later, when everyone else would say Katsuki to call him, I would say Kaken, and he would be indifferent. A few kids would be confused at this, usually the other kids close to Katsuki. Heck, even I was a little confused at how nonchalant he was. If anyone asked, though, he would simply reply, none of your business, usually followed by some knockoff nickname based on the kid's quirk, and that would be that. I would consider that to be my very first victory towards Katsuki Bakugo. He's won plenty of times over me on other things, but to call Katsuki Kaken was something I'm not going to lose sight over. He could call me useless Deku all he wanted. I've won this, and I was going to make use of it. But after years and years of saying the nicknames back and forth, Deku Kaken, it sort of became second nature to us. Or, once again, at least to me. Never have we used each other's real names, and it's been so long since I've heard my real name come out of my childhood friend's mouth. My eyes widened immediately, my back went straight, and my hair stood up out of my skin when I heard that voice. So if, and this is a big if, knowing Kaken's pride, but if he ever used my full name, well, Sue. My head slowly turned behind me as I processed the voice, but my mind kept denying it. No, it's not him. It's not him. He would never. It'd be so out of place, so out of his character, just completely jarring. Kuuu. And yet, there he was, the person he would have never, ever imagined saying my real name in public, Katsuki Bakugo.
And he said
that it would catch me off guard, to say the least. Catcha, before Izuku could even say his name correctly, Bakugo went and grabbed hold of his collar and dragged him to the nearest alleyway. Izuku began tripping along the way, but he made no motion to stop him. After that was done, Bakugo slammed Izuku to the brick wall, making said victim wince immediately after. Ugh. Kaken, what the heck are you? Don't you dare call me that after what you've done, Izuku. There it was, he said his real name again. And it did not help that he hissed out the name like the heat of a broken lava lamp. A cold shock went up Izuku's spine, as he recognized just what kind of trouble he got himself into. Dubbish, what do you mean I didn't do anything, Kaken, I swear? Don't you even think about bullshitting yourself out of this one, Izuku? Katsuki roared, part of his sentence sounding like a broken record, as small crackles of his quirk showed up in his other arm, before he quickly suppressed it. Izuku could tell he was itching, scratching to use his quirk on him. But for some reason he didn't. While a huge part of Izuku was terrified, a very tiny part of him was curious and confused as to why he wouldn't use it straight away. Whenever Kaken was even the slightest bit mad at him, he'd go ballistic with his quirk. Today was no exception. Katsuki was livid, furious with him, and yet he was holding his quirk back. How long? Kaken began, bringing even more confusion to Izuku. How long have you been lying to me, Izuku? Red, tiny, heated orbs stared back into his green ones, fury encompassed between them. How long have you been lying about not have a quirk, Izuku? And why the hell is it my quirk? And that was when Bakugo's free hand began exploding, but somehow Izuku noticed that they were out of his control. His entire arm was exploding almost, as if his arm was breaking out in a fury-covered sweat. Looking back at Kaken, Izuku immediately gulped his throat and made it clear. Izuku was prepared for something like this, despite praying to every god in the universe that it would never arrive, and yet despite that, it still happened. But Izuku prepared an answer. He had to make it clear and straightforward. He couldn't afford not to mess it up, lest he faced Katsuki's wrath. Izuku cleared his throat. I have a quirk that lets me use others' quirks, so long as I know about them well enough, Kaken. And your quirk, he glared back into Katsuki's eyes, making the hot head reel back, is the one that I know the best. I did what I could do what I need to do, to pass the entrance exam. Izuku's eyes began tearing up, as his glare softened to nothing. Because of your quirk, I did pass. It was thanks to you. So, thank you. Thank you so very much, Kaken. There, he said it, got it out of his chest, and boy, did it feel good. A slight smile appeared in Izuku's face, despite the worried look that covered the rest of it. Then, anxiety filled him, as the boy holding him hostage began trembling, his muscles tensing. So, you're telling me that all this time, you bugged me to tag along was so that you could copy my quirk? Izuku's face vaulted, as denial filled his being. Wait, what a no. No, it's not like that, Kacha. His mind was sending out strong warning signals, and he immediately ducked under an outstretched hand that exploded right above him. Izuku's eyes went minuscule at the sight of Katsuki's face. Pure, unadulterated rage was expressed from Katsuki as he stared Izuku, dead in the eye. Deku. Despite the situation he was in, Deku felt a tiny bead of joy being called his degrading nickname again. I'm really going to kill you now. That bead of joy was smashed to oblivion, as cold eyes looked towards Izuku when he said that. Deku immediately grabbed Katsuki's strong arm and used his own elbow against it. As a result, Katsuki reeled back his arm, incredibly bruised from said attack, finding it completely unexpected from the green boy. Gah. Yusanuva. Looking up only to see the brick wall staring back at him, he looked toward the exit to see Deku making a mad break towards it, then making a hard right. Wadden it, Deku. Izuku started sprinting at his fastest, his mind giving no exceptions. That look, the one Katsuki gave, was one that screamed pain and wrath. He knew, especially being secluded in an alleyway like that, he was going to put his body in danger. While Katsuki bullied and pummeled him before, that time was different, completely and utterly different, and he could not afford to take chances with the devil named Katsuki Bakugo. The look he gave, this look of completely engrossed anger, had no sight of his childhood friend anywhere. There wasn't a slight bit of Kaken in those eyes. He was a completely different person, focused entirely on ruining him. And Izuku couldn't afford to take the chance of waiting it out, just to see if he would return to the usual Kaken. It seems, Deku. Katsuki cried out in rage, catching any of the bystanders' attention, as Deku shut his eyes to stop the tears running down his face. Get back here and face me, you goddamn copycat. He really crossed the line on their friendship today. A few days ago, it was the final day of training for Izuku, as well as the same day he would be taking the entrance exam for you. High. Izuku could be found on the beach of Dagoba Municipal Park, stretching as he looked up the night sky, as the sun hasn't even arrived yet. Izuku could see it, the home stretch was coming close. He was almost finished with the task he was sent to do by All Might 10 months ago. After he was finished with this, he'd finally receive a quirk of his own, like he dreamed of for years. His eyes crossed onto the rusted-up truck, the one that's patronized him during the entire length of his training, from start to the very end. After this, Izuku thought, my training will be finished. So then, he began marching, his muscles already strained from all the trash he previously lifted away before, but his mind was engrossed into moving the truck. Sorry, kid, it isn't going to happen. He remembered the doctor that diagnosed his quirklessness as memories flooded Izuku's mind, setting off adrenaline receptors in his body as he placed his hands on the back of the truck. With this extra pinky toe joint, you're simply not going to develop a quirk. I'm so sorry, Izuku. His mother was crying, but even then, Izuku didn't stop. He started pushing, the truck dragging itself on the sandy beach, causing added friction. Ghhh. He pressed forward, firmly placing each step in the slippery sand, as he pushed the truck towards the stairs leading to the entrance. Without a quirk? All Might could be heard in his head as he continued moving the car. Being a pro hero is risky business, kid. So, no, I don't think you can be a hero without a quirk. Come on. Izuku hissed under his breath as the car began seemingly dragging more of its weight down onto the floor. Despite this, Izuku kept pressing. You're just a quirkless loser. A hero wannabe. Are you still thinking about applying to you? Hey, get real. You're much better off going to some other course. Without a quirk, you're nothing. Just pray that you get a quirk in the next life, and take a swan dive out of the window.
Tink.
Izuku pressed the back of the truck firmly against the wall and made his way to the front of it, looking up at the steps before noticing his vision was blurry. Izuku quickly wiped away the tears that seemed to crawl into his vision, probably from thinking about such painful memories. Regardless, he found a good spot to hold onto the truck as he made his climb, starting with the first step. Deku. What the hell are you doing here? I don't know. My legs, they've just started moving on its own. The memory of Izuku saving Katsuki from the sludge villain was first, the whole reason he was taking on this training in the first place. Kaken, I couldn't have just stood around and watched you die. With each step, his triceps felt like bleeding and breaking. Carrying the entire weight of the truck was a nightmare. The sounds escaping his voice sounded like gasps and cracks for air, but his face still held strong as he made the next step. Even though I said it myself, I wasn't following my own words. Pro heroes always goes beyond their limits to protect those that need. All Might yelled in his head, and Izuku felt the weight of the truck lessen from the adrenaline, the pain slowly diminishing. Young man, you, too, can become a hero. I can do this. Izuku made step after step, as the truck behind him made loud thump-ing noises behind him against the stairs. I'm almost there. Ha ha ha. And, out of anything else he could remember, it was the video he had his mom play repeatedly since his childhood. Ha 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 ha. Before Izuku knew it, he was climbing his man-made trash pile with the car, imagining himself carrying as many people as All Might was in the video. Fear not, citizens. Help has arrived. All Might's bright smile matched Izuku's heavily worn smile as he reached the top of the pile, truck in hand, as he firmly placed it on top of all the trash, making a loud thunk. Because I am here. Izuku snapped out of his daze when the sun began rising across the coastline, bringing a sudden brightness to the world that caught him off guard. As it rose, more of the beautiful, pristine beach that was once ruined by trash came into the light. Its previous beauty returned to it once more. I did it, Izuku whispered to himself softly, looking at the sight, the sound of the clear waters brushing past the beach, saying their own thanks to the boy. I finished my training. A sudden urge, straight from the very heart, began to quake under his skin, to scream, to shout, to finally rid of every doubt and fear in his body that was against his dream of becoming a hero. His body, shaking, unsure of whether to be angry at those that doubted him in the first place, or excited to see that he had the power to prove those that doubted him wrong. A faint sound of a door closing was behind him, but it wasn't enough to stop the rupture in his body from coming out. Ha-wea! He screamed, but even then, it wasn't enough. The sun beating on his face, the winding blowing all the way up on top of this pile, the once dark sky began turning blue. It all asked for more. Hi-a-a-a-a-a-a-a-a-a-a. A yell, almost primal, escaped his lips as his whole body trembled, releasing all the stress he built up these last 10 months, finally releasing at the feeling of finally accomplishing his goal. Izuku was finished with his training. Dagoba Municipal Park was restored to its prime. Oh my! At first, Izuku thought he heard All Might's voice, but with the ringing in his ears and in his head after screaming like that, he couldn't tell. Oh my goodness. Oh yeah.
Yep.
That was indeed All Might. The very same person he was imagining in his head. This time he was here. And here he thought he had to wait for him to arrive. That's a relief. Before he knew it, Izuku's body started wobbling, as his legs finally ceased to function properly after the trial he put them through, as he fell towards the bright and sunny beach not before All Might caught him before he could hit the ground. All Might's beaming smile could be easily seen in Izuku's eyes. "Good work," he said firmly, and a smile made it on Izuku's face. "I did it." All Might. Relief cracked the young boy's throat, his smile weak compared to the hero holding him. "I finally did it." "Yeah. You surprised me, young man. You've done much better than I could ever hope to imagine." Placing Izuku back on his 2 feet, he reached inside his coat pockets and pulled out his smartphone. "Here.
Take a look at this."
Izuku looked to see himself, crying up a storm as he tried to pull some piece of trash. A small laugh escaped his lips. Finally understanding the meaning of those photos All Might took on his first few days training. It wasn't some mean stunt, testing him to give up on the training entirely. It was those before and after shots that people who were training to lose weight and gain some muscle take at the very start of the journey. And look at you now. Izuku looked up at All Might, his face screaming with pride. "You've made yourself into a work of art. There's a bunch more work ahead, but you're starting to look like the perfect vessel to become One for All's next wielder."
Ah, right.
The quirk that he worked so hard to get. Now's the time he can finally receive it, right? Somehow, a somber feeling welled inside Izuku as he thought of the times he was told quirkless, and how he thought that would never change. And yet, starting today, that would become a thing of the past. "All Might, this is almost like a dream," he whispered, as tears began welling up in his eyes. "I feel like I'm the luckiest man alive right now with you, All Might. Man, the waterworks on this kid. It's been you who did all the hard work, you know." All Might, if he wasn't so impressed with his work on the beach, would have been seriously impressed with how much muscle his tear ducts would have by now, crying so much. "All right, enough crying, young man. It's time for your reward." Izuku looked up as All Might pulled a bit of his golden hair out, a single strand blowing in the wind. "Midoriya, there is a clear difference between being lucky and being deserving. One's an accident, and the other a reward. Never get the two mixed up, you understand? Puff out your chest and be proud, Izuku Midoriya." With All Might's words, a strong wave of determination filled Izuku's being. "You've earned my quirk fair and square." Now, holding out that same strand of hair in front of Izuku, he continued, "Eat my hair." The atmosphere, the mood of pride and reward, was destroyed when he said that, as Izuku looked at him, incredibly confused. "Huh?" All Might, noticing the young man's shock, immediately stood straighter. "Why you have to eat my hair in order to ingest my DNA? It's the only real way to acquire my quirk. And look, we don't have much time. Midoriya, your exam is in 3 hours, so we can't let this drag on much longer. Just eat the hair, so we can get a move on." "All right." Not really thinking about it, he snatched the piece of hair and threw it in his mouth, before his mouth puckered fiercely. "Sour. Why the heck is a piece of hair so sour? Great job, my boy. See, hair's not so bad, just an acquired taste." "Ha ha ha." All Might laughed it off, and Izuku nodded, before firmly swallowing, trying his DMN hardest not to hurl it back out. "Now listen, you've taken this quirk under a seriously short notice. I can't say you can use this quirk and come out without a scratch." He turned around and made his way to the stairs. "So, in the exams, be prepared for some kickback, okay?" "All right, but wait. How do I even use the quirk in the first place, All Might?" Izuku cried out. Oh yeah, silly me. It's quite simple, actually." He flexed one of his arms as he spoke. "When you're ready to use my quirk, clench your butt cheeks as tight as you can manage, and scream from the bottom of your heart. Smash." All Might did not follow suit with one of his signature punches after saying that, to Izuku's slight disappointment. "It's as simple as that, actually." "Ah, I see. So, just like that, I'll be able to." Izuku immediately shook his head repeatedly. "I can't think about stuff like that right now. I need to head home and change, get a shower in, study for the exam that's in 3 hours. And then, the realization that today was exam day finally struck Midoriya as he was tearing up again. All Might, the exam is in 3 hours. I don't think I can. Have faith, young Midoriya. He spoke proudly, halting Izuku's tears. You followed my training regime to a T. Well, besides you overworking yourself 3 months ago, but that's not the point here. I have no doubt that you will make it to a high. Just believe in yourself, and everything will follow through. All Might. Izuku smiled widely. Indeed, having All Might as your trainer was an incredible blessing to have. Now jump my truck. We have to get you back home. ASAP. Izuku hurried along with All Might, despite the protests his body made, with a big smile on his face. Jumping in the car, he already began counting with his hand. Okay, 3 hours, 3 hours. If I come home in around 10 to 20 minutes, I can shave some time by preparing my clothes before showering, giving me an extra 10 to 15 minutes to study for the practical exam online, giving me the heads up on how many points I should expect to. Midoriya, your mumbling's going to be the death of me one of these days. All Might, in his frail form, responded in court to Izuku's ramblings as he started the car. Said boy recoiled in shock. You don't even joke about that, All Might. Izuku cried out, and Toshinori Yagi laughed it off. You're going to stress yourself out if you overthink things, kid. You're like a ball of nerves going to explode. The car began moving as All Might continued. Like I said, relax for a short while. You've got this in the bag. Any more of that mumbling's gonna short-circuit your brain. Don't want that happening now, do you? Oh, of course not, Izuku exclaimed, before slowly reclining into his seat. Maybe he was overthinking things? He had no reason to doubt All Might's training, that which included studying the most important parts of the hero course. And now, he had inherited his quirk, one for all. Or at least he thought he did. Izuku really couldn't feel any much different after eating the hair, but taking All Might's word like the law, he believed him nonetheless. Looking out of the window, he watched as buildings and people blurred past him, his eyes slowly drifting away. Gosh, was this chair always this comfy? Izuku's breathing slowed as his eyelids closed completely, drifting into an exhaustion-fueled slumber. Ha. Ha ha. A small figure could be seen, kneeling on the ground, sweat dripping on down his skin. What? Izuku spoke, or at least he thought he did. He wasn't too sure, really. He felt weightless, light as a feather. It was an unnerving feeling, as Izuku took in the situation. In front of the kneeling figure stood yet another figure. Taller, firm, stood straight up, and held an aura of importance. Getting a closer look, Izuku could see he was wearing a suit. Stand up, little brother. The man who was standing had a loud, booming voice, giving Izuku sharp chills down his spine. Izuku's body began trembling, as did the figure who was kneeling. The suited man began laughing. Ha, ha ha ha. The man held his face, shaking his head. Foolish little brother, you tremble, knowing full well what kind of person you're facing. He then held out his arm. How can you be satisfied with the Japan we live in today? Everyone ostracizes you, calls you out, saying the same thing over and over. He slowly started closing his hand. You're quirkless. The trembling figure ceased trembling after hearing his words, and Izuku felt a sharp jab in his stomach, wincing at the sudden feeling of discomfort. Here I am, changing Japan, making it better. All for you, my little brother. The suited man shook his head. So, why must you be the hero of a clearly flawed nation that scorns you for your weakness? The man planted a firm kicking on his brother's side, flinging him away from Izuku and towards a wall, his back slamming hard against the structure.
Jaya. Ha.
Ha. The brother's breathing became rugged as he held his stomach. The suited man approached slowly. Izuku felt a similar jab in his stomach, over and over again, almost following his own heartbeat. It was becoming painful, to say the least. Give up. Give up this dream of becoming a hero. Let me correct this country and give you the life you deserve. The man outstretched his arm, and a million different arms immediately appeared and branched out of his suit. Cease your resisting at once. Ha.
Ha.
He. A rugged voice, coming from the other figure, began laughing as he slowly stood up, his knees quaking, arms nearly limp from his movement, before he brought them close to his body, in a fighting stance. Izuku's body began curling, tightening as his stomach seemed to be lit on fire. Jaya. Awaf. Constant pain rolled his body over back and forth, yet he continued to watch this figure in morbid curiosity. Big brother, you got this all wrong. He began speaking, his voice simply rugged and tired from the beating he's received. Correcting this country, flawed nation. All this lingo you talk sounds like that of a cold-hearted villain. The shadowed figure shook his head. I refuse, big brother. I refuse to let you become a villain just for my sake. You'd rather die fighting me to protect a nation that has no respect for the likes of you. If I don't fight you, then who will? He screamed, mixed with Izuku's pained gasps of air, and felt an unearthly power curl in his being. I don't need the country's respect given to me on some silver platter. I'll earn it by becoming the world's greatest superhero, even if it means defeating you right here, right now. Despite his stance, the figure was once again trembling, and with a pained eye, Izuku glanced at the figure, almost to see a similar, worried look plastered on the figure himself, looking quite like one of Izuku's own worried looks. And yet, the figure smiled a bright, confident smile that seemed so out of place with the rest of his face. Izuku's mind cramped down, along with his stomach, as he blacked out in this dream, vision, whatever it was. But before he could lose consciousness, he heard one last, parting remark from the suited man. To think we were born of the same blood. Kid, hey kid, wake up, darn it. Izuku could feel 100 frail slaps on his face and noticed the form of Toshinori Yagi, slapping him awake. All might. Izuku whispered weakly, and Yagi reeled back. Sho, shh. He hushed Izuku, as said boy was firmly getting his consciousness back in order. Not so loud, you idiot. We're in public. Look, we're back at your home, but you only got an hour to prepare, and the train ride to A's at least 20 minutes. Oh, only an hour. What the heck happened? Yagi quickly covered the mouth of the young boy, as the man's skin started sweating. Do you have lead for ears, kid? Don't say my name so loud. And it was a villain attack on the way to your house. Izuku, looking outside the car, noticed police cars around the area, assessing the damage from the recent attack that Izuku couldn't see. Look, I tried to wake you, but you just wouldn't budge, and I had to do something about it soon. He looked toward the sky, holding his forehead. Had I known the paparazzi would take so long interrogating me, I would have seriously given up the job to some other hero, but I couldn't. Just look away from the face of evil. My role as the symbol of peace wouldn't have it. He shook his head. So forgive me, kid. I tried to wrap things up quick, but life ain't fair. You should know that more than anyone else, right? It's okay, All Might. Yagi was caught off guard by how firm Izuku's voice sounded as he continued. It's a minor setback, but I have everything I need to ace this exam, so it's okay. Whoa, kid. That's a whole lot of spunk coming from somebody like you, Quirk. Yagi coughed up blood at the sight of Izuku, because despite his calm demeanor, his face was crying bucket loads of tears once again. I'm going to take this exam and give it my all, even after this minor setback. Kid, you sound tough, but you sure ain't looking your part. 1 hour later. Ha. Ha. Izuku's running slowed to the crawl as he ran past the open gates of the prestigious high, cherry blossoms blowing under the cold wind that flew throughout the property. Made it just in time. Izuku spoke in between haggard breaths as he approached the tall, gleaming building. I'm so glad nothing else slowed me down. Even though I didn't study for the exam, prepare for what the practical would, didn't even try out my new quirk yet. His thoughts became more and more mellow, before he began shaking his head. No, stop thinking about it. All Might said to believe in myself, and that's what I'm going to do. Just believe in yourself, Deku. Believe. Get out of my way, Deku. Izuku gasped at the familiar voice, before looking around to see that, indeed, it was Kaken, draped in a coat and scarf to battle the cold. Kaken. Izuku spoke in recognition, as Kaken glared hotly. Didn't you hear me? I said move, or I'll light you up. Katsuki exclaimed, sending warning symbols down Izuku's spine as he stood straight up.
Wah.
I mean, hey, good morning. I just wanted to wish you luck in the exam, and hope for the best out there, okay? Good luck. Izuku spoke in one fluid motion, repeating words unnecessarily out of fright. Katsuki, however, simply walked past him in silence, not even giving him a look of disgust or anything.
Ha? Ha.
Izuku let out some confused words at Katsuki's behavior, as his mind went back on track. Wait, he's not even going to bully me? What happened? He scratched his head, his eyebrows furrowed. Could it be that he's not nearly as mad at me as he was before after the sludge villain attack? Deku. What the hell are you doing here? I don't know. My legs, they've just started moving on its own. Kaken, I couldn't have just stood around and watched you die. Ever since then, he hasn't really talked, but during the training, he never really came out to attack me. Does that mean he's… Izuku rapidly shook his head one more time. No, I can't think about, especially not now. I'm not the useless Deku that I once was. I have a quirk now, and with all the work I've put in for it, thanks to All Might. He began making his way towards the school stairs. I'm going to take my first steps towards becoming a hero. Only to begin falling face first to the ground, tripping on his own leg in nervousness, or I'll just die trying. He thought, before being held up by some invisible force. He whispered, looking at the ground, before noticing his own legs weren't even touching it as well. Wah. Hee. Are you okay? He heard a female voice next to him, but… Yuahag. Izuku was too distracted by the uncomfortable feeling of being held off the ground, squirming and shaking at the feeling, trying to reach the ground once more with his feet, before finally looking toward the source of the voice. Hey, the girl next to him laughed, and Izuku stared at her with beady eyes as she held her arms, felt her drag him effortlessly towards the ground, then propped him back on his 2 feet, before clapping her hands together, and by doing so, Izuku felt the weight of gravity placed once again on his shoulders. I stopped your fall with my quirk. I know I should have asked, but I had a feeling that it would be better than kissing the ground, right? Dead silence was Izuku's response, as his face matched that of a mannequin with googly eyes. Yet despite this, the girl continued, Oh man, this exam's really got me all worked up. You think so, too? Why, I mean… Words were not Izuku's strong point at this moment. Once again, she continued, Well, I guess I'll see you inside. She then turned toward the school, not before waving her hand. Bye. As the girl, whose name Izuku did not know yet, walked off, Izuku's face once again matched the aforementioned mannequin with googly eyes, before burning hot red. Holy crackers, I just talked to a girl. Deku shined with manly boy pride, although nobody stopped him because ruining a cinnamon bun's happiness is a serious crime. Didn't actually talk. A caption appeared below his face. Surely whoever put that caption down was getting put into jail right this second. Haha. Ahaha. Waha. Izuku laughed hysterically at the thought of talking to a girl. Yep, make that maximum security. Are cinnamon buns corrupted? Inside the school auditorium, several lights started shining on stage, as the screen shined bright with UA's logo burning through. Below the screen was a man, a familiar figure, the pro hero, Present Mike. What's up you, candidates? Thank you for tuning in to me, your school DJ. He pointed toward the crowd. Come on and let me hear ya, he called. Only to receive silence. Rocking to a tough crowd, huh? He spoke, as his arms trembled with a shrug, before straightening himself out. That's A-okay. Let's just get right into the good stuff. I'm gonna show you how this practical exam's gonna go down, ya hear me? Despite his less-than-stellar reaction from before, he threw out his hands and let out a big, Are you ready? Obviously expecting an eager response. Only to be met with silence once again. Yeah, Present Mike whispered, almost as if to satisfy himself. Oh my goodness! Izuku exclaimed. Not even the first day, and he gets to meet one of the most reputable and popular pro heroes. It's the voice hero, Present Mike. I've tuned in to every radio show every day of the week. He's so cool. Will you shut it? Katsuki Bakugo, who just happened to sit right next to him, muttered in annoyance. Despite his rock and roll talk, Present Mike made it quite clear what was to be expected of Izuku and the nominees. They would set out after the orientation towards their designated battle centers, a total of 7 between the letters A and G. The first thing Izuku realized was that both him and Kaken, despite being nominees with numbers back-to-back, were supposed to head out to neighboring stations. I see. Katsuki suddenly spoke, and Izuku looked at him to notice the hothead glancing at Izuku's card as well. They're splitting us up so that we can't pair up with any of our buddies. Why, yeah, that's right. We're assigned to different battle centers because of it, aren't we? Izuku asked him, only for the boy to glare back as a response. Don't just start peeking at my card, Deku. Izuku immediately reeled away, knowing his mistake, as Katsuki glared at his card instead. And here I was hoping to smash you down to the dirt. Ha ha ha. Izuku laughed awkwardly. Say what you want about Katsuki, but he was very passionate when it came to curb-stomping his supposed childhood friend. And like that, Present Mike continued to explain what would happen in these battle centers. Robots of different sizes would emerge and cause havoc to the fake cities hosted by these centers. It was the candidates' job to break these robots, using whatever quirks they have in their arsenal. By the size and capabilities of these robots, each would give them a set of points. 1 point to the quick and scrawny robots, 2 to the more capable robots, and 3 to the bulky masses of steel that, somehow, were still called robots, designated as the leader of the lower robot groups. Each had their own strengths and weaknesses, but for Izuku, each were plenty terrifying. If he had even a remote shot of passing the exam, he would have to beat quite a few of those machines, and even then— Excuse me, Mr. Present Mike. Sir, I have a question. Another new voice rang out, catching Izuku's attention as Present Mike pointed toward the candidate. Hit me, Present Mike exclaimed, as a spotlight shined down on the person in question. The man pointed to the paper showing the robot types being discussed currently. On the paper, you clearly list 4 different robot types, yet talk only about 3. If this is an error from you to A themselves, then this is a shameful act that needs to be corrected immediately. Putting the paper down, he held a hand onto himself. As exemplary students seeking out you, A, as their choice of hero school, we expect only the best. Mistakes like these cannot be tolerated. Izuku watched with awe as the man spoke his mind clearly, until he looked straight back at Izuku and pointed at him, catching the boy off guard. And you, the one with the curly hair. Wh-wami? Izuku curtly replied, as the man glared at him. You've been muttering during the entire length of the presentation.
Stop that.
Izuku immediately went to cover his mouth, sweating profusely at the idea of distracting his possible classmates. If you can't take this seriously, leave immediately. Don't distract the rest of us. The man continued, and Izuku couldn't help but tremble before looking towards Kaken for any signs of him being annoyed, and indeed, his eyebrows were twitching rapidly. Yep, he was annoyed too. I'm sorry, Izuku weakly replied, and the kids around him laughed a little in response. All right, settle down, rock stars. Examinee number 7111. He held out a thumbs up as the man was giving him attention once more. Thanks for calling in with your request. Don't worry, that was no error. However, the 4th and final robot was left out on purpose. It's simply an obstacle we will be throwing at you sometime during the duration of the exam. He held out his hand. Even if you do manage to defeat it, he will be worth only 0 points, so don't go slamming him down expecting for an encore. Thank you very much for explaining, the man, examinee number 7111, bowed deeply before having a seat. That's all I got for you today, listeners. He leaned forward, his pale yellow eyes beaming past his shades. Are you ready to go beyond? Can I hear a plus ultra? So much for 3rd times the charm. Despite being met with silence, a thick atmosphere of anxiety filled the room, and Izuku could feel it. This entire room was anxious to get started. Good luck. Let's see what all of you are capable of. President Mike finished, ending the orientation. And Izuku was feeling it, too. The need to show his worth. Outside, at Battle Station B. Outside the battle center, Izuku could be seen trembling in his shoes behind the crowd of other candidates, his face filled to the brim with anxiety, but a very worried smile was still present. It came as no surprise that he was the most worried of the bunch, but everyone else was just as anxious. It did not help that what stood in front of them was a towering gate, the sheer size of the entrance looming over them. Well, Izuku began thinking, trying to soothe his own inner crisis. This is it. Time to put 10 months of All Might's training to the test. His knees started shaking more as the pressure built up. I will become a hero, just like I had always dreamed. I won't let myself down. To return himself back to his senses, he slapped his face with both of his hands, and just like that, his body returned to normal, well, almost if not a little red from the fierceness of his slap. He got a chance to look at the battle center properly, and, despite being merely a city for tests, Izuku was impressed on how lifelike it was. The buildings were nearly exact as the ones that could be found in big cities like Shibuya, and the sheer size of the place could be considered a landmark itself. Looking down, he then noticed that, among the candidates, the same girl that saved him from his doom, with the ground was there, practicing breathing exercises to cool down her senses. Izuku found himself walking towards her. I should probably return the favor earlier this morning and wish her luck. But before he could do that, he was stopped by a firm hand placed on his shoulder, and looking back, he was completely taken aback to see the same guy calling out his mumbling from orientation, stopping him from saying his thanks to the nice girl.
What?
He's here, too. Izuku screamed in his head, as the man looked towards the girl Izuku knew from earlier. She looks like she's trying to put her focus into the exam. Looking down, the man's gaze made Izuku shrink. Are you going to distract her, too? Are you trying to ruin her chances of succeeding? You? No. That's not what I was going to do, not by a long shot. Izuku tried to explain himself, before hearing some laughter, looked back at the group to see the candidates talking about him. Look over there. Isn't it the guy from earlier? The one who got embarrassed? He nearly wet himself in the lecture hall. Guy's such a loser. That just means one less competitor to worry about, right? And then, for all the wrong reasons, everyone's morals got higher for the exam, not even noticing the gates for the battle center opening behind the group. Why do I feel like everyone's already written me out of the exam? Izuku asked himself, as the man in front of him crossed his arms, while beginning to say, "Start." Whatever he had to say, it was cut off almost immediately by the same man at the lecture, President Mike, screaming for the contestants to begin. Everyone, then, was confused at the sudden outburst. What's the matter?
Get a move on.
Were you waiting for a countdown? There's nothing like that in real-life battles. If anyone could see President Mike from the tower he was in, he'd be waving his hands like crazy. So get moving. Go, 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 go. Is he serious? Izuku first thought, then noticed all the examinees running through the gate, dread filling his body. Oh my god, he is serious. Almost tripping, he began to make a sprint himself, but noticed he was far behind of the pack. Crap. This is really bad. I've started late. He grits his teeth and began to focus. Alright, calm down, focus on what's coming. If you want to be a hero, then you have to think rationally. With heat in Izuku's eyes, he looked up. I got this. All Might's on my side. Running past a crossroad, he felt his mind send danger signals down his body, and before he knew it, thwack! A hard, metal surface slammed him in his side, making Izuku's eyes widen terribly. Gah! What the? His body was sent soaring towards the side roads, away from the rest of the group before he could even catch up to them. Quickly getting up, he looked to see a three-pointer robot, standing large and menacingly above him, with a few robots behind him. Sabotage protocol. Successful. The larger robot spoke robotically, as it turned to the other robots. Proceed to follow other examinees. Roger. The robots spoke in unison, before setting back out on the main road, following behind the rest of the group. Now then. The robot turned, facing Izuku Midoriya, who was currently trembling at the sight of the menacing machine, his eyes wide, examining number 2234. Why can't I move? Come on, just get up and smash that thing. Smash it. Yet, despite his brain yelling to smash, his body didn't budge, not even for a moment. The robot lifted his arm and hurled it over towards Izuku, making his eyes widen. I'll kill you. The robot suddenly screamed, completely in contrast to its previous behavior. Izuku found his will to move after rolling sideways, away from the robot's fist. That crash made a crater on the pavement, spider cracks twirling around the rupture in the ground, as Izuku's eyes shook. No way. Something like that. Izuku's mind went into overdrive, as the robot easily lifted his fist off of the ground and faced Izuku once more. Something like that could actually kill me. Art of Stuckton. An extremely glittery blonde boy shot another laser out of his belly, destroying the last of the one-pointers that seemed to follow him earlier.
Phew.
C-Tape Moin-san, that was a close one. These robots have no tact. Looking elsewhere, the opposite of Izuku currently was, he began running once more. Better start finding more, Viet. Quick. Stand still, will you? The robot screamed once more, and on reflex, Izuku jumped backwards and back on his feet, once again.
Crash.
Leaving an indent on the street once more, no thanks to the robot. Can people die in this exam? Have people died in this exam? His fingers began sporadically twitching as he walked back up to wall. There hasn't been a confirmed case. But that was before quirkless applicants could apply. Stop resisting and... The robot lifted his hand up in the air. And for that moment, time seemed to slow for Izuku, as he could see how the future could play out. This Justin, a young boy, Izuku Midoriya, age 14, was pronounced dead on the spot during a tragic accident during the entrance exam for Utah High. Some nameless news proctor explained, as a picture of himself was shown on the side. Sources say that he was killed by one of the obstacles during the practical portion of the exam. Some say the reason was because he was quirkless, being unable to properly handle the trails given by the school grounds, despite initially allowing quirkless examinees to partake in the entrance exam. Needless to say, this exception is being revoked as we speak. I don't want to die like that. The accident could have been avoided if he simply just had a quirk. Just pray that you have the quirk in the next life, and take a swan dive out of the window. Katsuki suddenly came into his mind, and Deku made a small smile. Kaken. His eyes teared up as his stomach churned in what he assumed was out of sorrow. What would you have done, Kaken? You wouldn't have let this robot kill you, would you? His teeth widened, thinking how amazing Kaken would have been during a fight like this. Wow, you're so cool, Kid Midoriya exclaimed, as him and Kid Katsuki explored the forest together, butterfly nets at hand. Your quirk is amazing, Kaken. Kaken. He closed his eyes, and his body began burning up as he remembered everything they did together, every fight, every laugh, every encounter they had, whether they were good or bad. Izuku reached toward the notebook, the one burnt by Katsuki Bakugo, and ripped out the page that featured Katsuki as a hero, using his quirk to save the day. Kaken. And ripped the page right out of the book.
Die.
The robot lunged at the young boy, and Izuku opened his eyes wide, holding out his arms to cover himself. Stay away, ye! Midoriya screamed, and his arms suddenly crackled with light before. Quabom! Moments earlier, inside the judge's tower. All cameras up and functional. All screens operational. A faculty member manning the computers reported, ready to proceed with the entrance exam. Great job as always. A furry creature no more than knee-length spoke in full English, wearing a suit and bow tie. It'd be quite the shame for one of our systems to suddenly break down, Mr. Faculty Member. You have my thanks.
Air.
You're welcome, Principal Nedzu, sir, the member, confused by the name given to him, responded in kind anyway. Now pay attention, heroes. I have a good feeling about this class. The creature, known as Principal Nedzu, spoke aloud among the other pro-heroes. While saying this, he gave a particular look towards Toshinori Yagi, who frantically looked at each screen trying to find a certain examinee. Yagi-san, he asked politely. Yes, Principal Nedzu, he spoke shakily, passing a glance at the screens every so often. I know that you have taken interest in one particular examinee here. He held out a finger, one short and white finger, but you must know that it would be unwise to choose favorites as a teacher. We must demonstrate equality among our students here and you. Putting his finger down, Nedza smiled. We must not fail to do this, else we lose our reputation as both teachers and as pro-heroes, understand? Right. You've told me this before, Nedzu. He looked toward the screen, much more calmly this time around as Nedza noticed, and he smiled. All right, Yamada. Present Mike stood as he heard his name called from Nedzu himself. I think we've kept our budding students waiting long enough. If you could do the honors. All right. Time to get this show on the road. Pumping a fist in the air, he made his way outside of the room and towards the top of the tower. Start. Oh man, talk about a wolf that's out of the pack. Another pro-hero present for the judging spoke as they watched Midoriya chasing the other examinees. Don't suppose that's the boy you're talking about, Yagi? Nedzu whispered, making sure the other judges didn't hear. Yeah. He spoke just as quietly, watching him with a careful eye. While Nedzu did mention not to pick favorites, Yagi couldn't help himself but want to see Izuku in action. Over the long 10 months, he'd be lying to say he didn't get attached to the boy. His spirit and merit both screamed similarly to his. Before Nedzu could reply, however, some of the other judges gasped when the boy got slammed to the side easily by one of the robots, a three-pointer to be exact. As the lower point robots head back towards the large group of examinees, the three-pointer focused on Izuku at that given moment. Yagi watched with bated breath, as Izuku was as still as a puppet, only moving when the robot lunged at him. Come on, Midoriya. You need to defeat him. Like a worried father, he was yelling in his head as sweat rolled down his face. Watching Izuku dodge once more, only to back to a wall. Don't suppose he's got a plan? One pro-hero spoke aloud. Hardly. A popular pro-hero, the R18 hero Midnight, spoke in response. It looks like that kid is just flailing around. Not very youthful if you ask me. She finished. It got Yagi's mind jumping in circles. What are you doing, Midoriya? You're wasting precious time. Just use one for all to smash that thing to bits already. As the robot finally aimed his fist once more towards the boy suddenly acted only for the screen to suddenly flash bright, then black out. A big no signal was present on said screen. Toshinori Yagi jumped out of his seat, catching the other judge's attention as blood filled his mouth. What happened? He spoke through blood. We lost connection with the camera, sir. Shall I proceed to a different camera location? One of the staff spoke. Nedzu. Yagi whispered hoarsely, and the creature nodded, before turning to the staff. Please find another suitable camera and refocus on examinee 2234. Nedzu gave out the order. Right, the staff members responded, switching through the different cameras, only to find one or two closer cameras also disabled for unknown reasons. What kind of quirk did that kid use, anyway? One of the pro-heroes asked. It said in the files that he was registered quirkless. A more notable hero, Cementos, spoke in response. No way. That young man is quirkless. Midnight spoke in surprise. To think there'd be somebody who would actually apply to this course, without a quirk. That takes some serious courage. Well then, if he's quirkless, then there's a likely chance that he might, before anything else could be said. Vision was regained on the monitor that previously had no signal on it. We've regained visual contact, a staff member reported, as the pro-heroes focused once more on the screen. Ugh, can't see anything with all of this smoke. Midnight spoke, her eyes squinting as if trying to see better through the monitor. Yagi Toshinori was also squinting at the monitor as closely as possible, trying to see any sign of the young boy he trained the past 10 months. However, he soon stopped just to notice faint orange glow through the smoke, sporadically appearing in different sizes. Yagi raised an eyebrow. What is that orange glow? As he spoke, the other noticed it as well before speaking up. It's kind of peculiar, isn't it? Cementos spoke. Seems to me like a rockin' light show. Present Mike spoke as well. Anyone know what it could be? Midnight asked, and heroes next to her shook their heads. The smoke began clearing up, as more of the figure could be seen. Yagi sighed at the sight of the boy's tracksuit still standing, and he fell back onto his seat, holding his head. That kid's gonna give me a heart attack one of these days. He spoke solemnly, before looking back up to the screen only to see the orange glow present on the boy himself. What? Hey, what kind of CGI effect is this? Present Mike spoke loudly. I thought you guys said he didn't have a quirk? Yagi leaned forward, almost feeling like getting up again, incredibly quiet as he watched his trainee come into full view.
Cough. Cough.
Izuku was hacking out fumes and smoke as he tried to regain his bearings. After that robot launched at him, all he could remember was a blinding light before all this debris came into the area. What the heck is with this smoke? Izuku wheezed out, his voice hoarse from the lack of air as he tried opening one of his eyes. Where's the robot? Did somebody with a quirk stop him?
Pop.
Crackle fits. Pop. The sound of a firecracker was near Izuku as he looked up towards the noise, expecting some sort of person there, only to find chunks of the robot laying around. Is that the robot? Izuku began wondering.
Pop. Pop.
FTZZZZZZ. More of that firecracker noise began popping in, and Izuku noticed a slight glow on his right arm.
Pop.
Only to see a tiny explosion appear on his arm once more. Yua. Izuku jumped, landing right back on his butt as he held out his right arm in fright. Pop. Crackle. The hand had more explosions popping out of it, causing Izuku's eyes to widen and for sweat to start coming out of his body.
Pop.
Crackle. Pop.
Foul.
Causing more explosions to appear on his arm. A sharp gasp escaped his lips, and Izuku's other arm went for his mouth as he covered it, his mind suddenly running 1,000 miles an hour at this info. Oh my god. Crackle. Pop. There's no way. This must be a joke. This isn't All Might's quirk. This is. Oh my god. This is.
Pop.
One more, definitive explosion rang clear in Izuku's ears. His eyes began tearing up as emotions flooded his being. This is Kakens. He started speaking, quietly, frightened, almost afraid to say it out loud, before gulping loudly. This is Kakens.
Quirk.
Why am I using Kakens' quirk? How am I using his quirk? What the heck is going on? He spoke aloud, his eyes shaking.
Pop.
Crackle. Judging by his reaction, it seems like the young boy finally acquired his quirk. Cementos spoke, catching the judge's attention. Wait, hold the phones. Present Mike spoke loudly. This late into the show? How is something like that even possible? Indeed, Nedza spoke calmly, as he rubbed his tiny chin. There had been cases of late bloomers, but even then, those were recorded way back before middle school. This boy either hid his quirk really well, or maybe the robot scared the quirk out of him. Nedza glanced at Yagi, who had his mouth wide open, his eyes sharp and surprised. Yagi-san? Nedzu asked for his friend's attention. Can somebody become a hero like you, even without a quirk? Izuku's words, 10 months back, rang once again inside Yagi's mind, as he looked just as shocked as Izuku. Young man, this is something you wouldn't lie about something like that, would you? Yagi asked himself as he closed his mouth. Has your quirk finally awakened after all this time? Regardless of this development, the exam must go on. Nedzu exclaimed, before turning to present Mike. Yamada-san, give out the time, will you? Nedzu called out, and present Mike grinned. With pleasure, boss, he exclaimed, heading outside and jacking up his quirk to something 100 amps. 8 minutes. Izuku immediately heard present Mike call out, his eyes widening at the information. 8 minutes. Izuku shook his head and glared at his hand that was sparkling with explosions. I don't need an explanation right now. I have to pass this exam if I ever want to be a hero. Holding out his arm in front of him, he closed his hand, and the explosions ceased to continue. Closing his eyes, he could feel the pressure building within him, the passion to build stronger, brighter firepower inside his body. And with this passion, he willed stronger explosions to appear, and indeed, more pressure and fire came out of his arm, making the young boy smile, with Kaken's amazing quirk. Quaboom!
Sha.
Stronger, more profound explosions made an appearance on his arm, and the recoil made Izuku shake, needing him to control the exploding arm with his free one. He felt the embers brush past him, aimlessly and free, blowing through the wind. It was enough to bring out a newfound confidence with Izuku Midoriya, one that wasn't found at the start of the exam. I will beat this exam and become a hero, just like All Might. Izuku smiled, determination burning inside his being as strong as the embers on his hands. Thank you for reading. Continue down below for some important info and some review responses as well. Hope to see you next time. Alright, 41 pages worth and 10k plus words. Phew, I hope it was worth it. So, like I written above, the amount of support everyone has given me is crazy. I absolutely love and appreciate those that put the extra time to review, favorite, and follow this story. Seriously, seeing numbers like that rise above the rest of the stories make me incredibly confident about the way this story will shape up. Which brings me to my next thing, the story. The pilot I made earlier works with only the best action-wise scenes possible, with no rhyme or reason, which might come off as confusing to the reader. Unfortunately, it should come out as no surprise that I cannot do the same with the actual story. The story will have to be built from scratch. The origin of Izuku's All for One, along with the demonstration of its abilities and drawbacks, need to begin from square one and build up gradually with a maintained pace. In short, DR if you will, the start of the story may possibly be slow for some readers. Izuku cannot have all of the quirks in his arsenal right away. That's silly storytelling and a cop-out. All I ask is to please be patient and give ample amounts of support like with Chapter 1. Like I said before, the goal here is 10 chapters, and with those 10 chapters, the story will build itself to where I want it to be in due time. Rest assured, I will not give up on this story anytime soon. Thanks again for reading. Review responses will be below. Angrypse13, thanks for being my very first review. Surprisingly enough, you're the only one to ask that question as far as Izuku using Recovery Girl's quirk, haha. We'll just have to find out, won't we? As far as All for One goes, this chapter could explain when it showed up, but the rest will have to be explained later. No spoilers, lol. Just some random readers 01. It will be referred to as All for One for now, in the early chapters. However, I already planned a different name for the quirk, very similar to the neighbors One for All and All for One. Again, no spoilers, lol. Also, the whole harem thing is what I planned initially, but I thought against it, as that kind of romance would be strained knowing there'd be multiple partners. It just simply wouldn't feel realistic. Be prepared for some interesting encounters in the future, though. Carlos 1234 Ife. Glad you think so.
Hope to keep it that way.
Surgeon Stark. Thank you. And yes, I'm a fan of vanilla too. Glad to have similar tastes. Haikachi 107. I laughed realizing how many people want to change the name of Izuku's All for One. Thank you for your review, man. Yes, this All for One is very different and will be explained in future chapters why that is. Trust me, I already got the new name for it down. But, once again, no spoilers, lol. Santoridium. Your review has made me very happy. I'm glad my writing has been enough to motivate your response. I'm glad to see your appreciation and would like to hear you more if you had the time. I'm glad you're excited to see the future of this story. I am too. It's been buzzing in my head for way too long. The thought of Izuku having this quirk gives a ton of potential for him and his friends. Expect more in the future, okay? Hope to hear from you again. Guest, I can see you're up to date with the manga, talking about Bakugo's situation like that. I only know bits and pieces for those events, since I'm purely an anime watcher for the moment, but the scene I depicted in the pilot holds some time after the Hosa City hero killer incident, hence the references to Hosa City in the pilot. Glad you caught me saying Izuku is an OP. Like I said, there will be limitations, and some of those limitations will be illustrated in the next chapter. Elmas Guapanazario 501. Translated to, I found it great and somewhat original. Very good, quite original. Give it an all-for-one version that requires enough learning to apply it. Glad you can read along with the story. You seem to understand all-for-one's concept pretty well. Hope you come back and enjoy the story as it progresses. The man of many talents. Hell yeah. Some guy, huh? Yeah, that's pretty cheesy LMAO. Probably gonna stick with Deku on this one. There's too much of an emotional impact that name brings to Izuku. I simply cannot drop it. Johnny Spector. It seems you're getting it. There's a bit more to it as I will demonstrate in later chapters, but in short, yeah. Definitely not like the villains all for one. Mook 854. Another review that made me particularly happy. I'm glad my writing was fantastic enough to get you excited for more. Hope you enjoy this chapter, too. And yeah, where's the fun in an OP Deku, right? Mike 202303. Will do, buddy. Keep sticking around as well, alright? Kawaii Snowdrop. I'm glad to hear it. Thanks for the review. Also, thank you for mentioning keeping the characters themselves and not OOC. I'm double, if not triple checking my writing every break to make sure that's the case. Hopefully you fantastic readers will let me know otherwise, and don't worry about the confusing timeline thing. That's simply because I wanted the pilot to get straight into the action. Shining Star 32. Thank you very much for the review, and thanks for caring about me personally, LOL. I'm glad you're excited about this story and what's to come because trust me, there's more to come. If I had to ask anything from the readers, it's to be patient in the very first few chapters, simply because I'll be demonstrating everything about this quirk right before it starts to really take off. Superfanman 217. In All Might's voice, and I love you. Random reviewer. LOL, just kidding. Thanks for your review. Got the moves like Yeager. Wow. Surprise review the day I upload this chapter, LOL. This version of the quirk is different and will be explained in the chapters to come. Stay tuned, yeah? Recap of the last chapter. 8 minutes. Izuku immediately heard Present Mike call out, his eyes widening at the information. 8 minutes. Izuku shook his head and glared at his hand that was sparkling with explosions. I don't need an explanation right now. I have to pass this exam if I ever want to be a hero. Holding out his arm in front of him, he willed stronger explosions to appear only to see more fire and pressure build up in his arm, with Kaken's amazing quirk. Quaboom.
Sha.
Stronger, more profound explosions made an appearance on his arm, and the recoil made Izuku shake, needing him to control the exploding arm with his free one. I will beat this exam and become a hero. Izuku smiled, determination burning inside his being as strong as the embers on his hands. Chapter 3. Crossing the Line, Part 2. With Izuku's new quirk, that bore a very similar resemblance to his best friend Kaken's, he felt the burning desire to beat this exam to the ground. Indeed, he saw firsthand the capabilities of the explosion quirk for years now, thanks to Kaken, watching it grow to the quirk the hothead used proudly and with expertise. This quirk was strong. It was very powerful, all right. And it was going to be the key to his place at Yude at a high.
Hey.
He heard a familiar voice call out to him, and he turned to find no other than the guy back in the auditorium, the one that accused him of distracting everyone. Are you all right? He exclaimed. I heard you scream and assumed the worst. Is everything? Before Izuku could even respond, his eyes caught a shadow approaching behind him and immediately noticed a large, moving thing approaching the guy, without him even knowing. Examinee spotted. It was yet another three-pointer who was following the man to this location. Said man turned around to face the robot, only for his eyes to widen. A three-pointer? I must have let my guard down. He crouched to a runner's position, despite his proximity to the robot. I need at least few meters of running space to he jumped at a sudden green blur that ran past him. Take this. He watched the plain-looking Izuku raise a palm at the robot. Fwapim. Reeling back as the sudden explosion out of nowhere caught him off guard. Whoa! The man exclaimed, holding his footing at the winds billowing everywhere, watching the robot get launched as bits and pieces flew everywhere. The wind died down, and the upright man looked towards Izuku as he panted with an outstretched hand.
Pwapsh. Pop.
crackle crackle, that had tiny pops of fire growing out of it. Izuku turned to face him. Yeah, totally fine. Perfect even, he exclaimed, answering the man's question he asked in the first place. What's somebody like you doing with such a destructive quirk? He responded, watching as the carnage in front of him, parts of the robot still falling from the sky, and smoke was thrown around from the wind. He pointed towards the wreckage Izuku made. What you did was complete overkill. A simple explosion to the front should have taken him down just fine. Overkill, Izuku repeated, before shaking his head. I'm sorry. I just wanted to take down that robot bee before he could get you, that's all. The man blinked at his honest response, his words sounding similar to somebody he knew. He closed his eyes and looked away. Despite my better judgment, you did take out that robot when I couldn't. So, he quickly bowed, his quick behavior change surprising Izuku. Thank you for helping me. Hell. An awkward sound came from Izuku's throat, as he was still as a billboard, feeling awkward at the man taking a bow out of nowhere. You don't need to bow. But I must. What you did for me, he looked up at Izuku, was a heroic act. And I respect that. Heroic act. Heroic act. Heroic act. Izuku went stiff, his eyes wide at the man's words. He then looked down at his hand, plumes of explosions coming out of it seemingly stronger now as Izuku's emotions burned brighter. What he did was heroic. It was only his thoughts until now, that he would become a hero, but after somebody else saying it. Young man, you too can become a hero. Just like All Might. Izuku suddenly made a sprint towards the other way, away from the man as he watched with confusion. Is he offended from what I said? He thought, only then to realize what he was partaking in. No, he's focused on the exams. I shouldn't waste any more time. I just wanted to take down that robot bee before he could get you. That's all. Cursing himself for becoming distracted, he thought back on Izuku's words, saying something like that. That guy. It's A10. Midnight, with hearts bouncing around her, exclaimed, holding a sign saying 10 on it. Oh, the youth that young boy has. To jump in and save another man in action like that. We need more vigorous men like that in our generation. She began dancing around, getting a few sweat drops from the fellow pro heroes around her. You're being biased, Midnight. No matter how you look at it, Ida Tenya would have performed just the same as his other encounters. Cementos muttered, placing a cement-covered hand under his chin. I'll pass on this rating. He gave her a hard look, efficiently ending her dance of happiness. Save those for when they really matter. You know better than to toss points around like that. Buzzkill. She muttered under her breath, before noticing the other pro heroes following suit, refusing to give out their ratings. She sighed. Fine. I'll take things seriously from now on. Bunch of herbivores. She remarked on their lack of backbone. Don't hesitate on what you feel is right, Midnight-san. Nedza spoke up, gaining her attention. After all, heroes should always meddle and help those that are in danger, no matter who they are and what they're capable of. Izuku Midoriya seems to have those qualities, despite the competition this exam brings. He then held out a sign with a 5 printed out. I feel as though Izuku deserves this. The young man has certainly showed his hero spirit. Nedzu passed a glance at his friend Yagi. The man was silent, his hollowed-out eyes tracking Izuku's every move, curious and astonished. Nedzu, with a small smile, turned to the faculty staff. Very well. If nobody else will deliver their rating, then for Izuku Midoriya, he should gain 15 rescue points for his actions. Izuku ran. His blood was pumping, his legs were quaking, and his mind was going crazy. But most importantly,
Pop.
his new quirk was going wild. What that man said was going on repeat for a while now, as Izuku held a great big smile on his face, his eyes watery. If I can do something like that so easily, using Kaken's quirk, then. He stopped immediately when a one-pointer showed up in front of him. Target found. It spoke, and Izuku's first reaction was to blast it to smithereens, until the man's words spoke in his head again. Wasn't what you did a bit overkill? With a glare and a grin, Izuku dodged the charge the robot gave, and settled with a well-placed explosion dotted right on its side. FWAPMM. The robot crumbled before him, effectively shutting the robot down right on the spot. Izuku had a grand smile on his face, once again looking at his explosion-popping hand. Even with something as simple as that, and I barely broke a sweat. He clenched his hand and looked up towards the crossroads. This exam is going to be a piece of cake. Izuku began running again but started crying as tears wafted in the wind. It's so simple. It's so simple, he exclaimed in his head as he used his arm to brush away the tears. I understand now why Kakin is the way he is. Why he's so bossy. Kakin, you're so amazing. Your quirk is so cool. I hope mine can be just as great when it comes. With a quirk as flexible as his, it really... He jumped above a corpse of a machine and sought out more robots. His eyes continued to water up, as he had no doubt or dread touch his being while using the quirk in his hand. It really gives me the strength to take on the world. Bennett. Izuku overheard another examinee cursing as he looked to find a man, surrounded by one-pointers. Really put myself in a pickle here. Izuku's mind clicked as he grinned at the sight before him. Izuku sprinted towards them and blew up one of the one-pointers to give him an entrance to jump in. Hey, think you need some help? Izuku exclaimed, and the guy looked at him as if he was crazy. Huh, you're that kid from before? He asked, shocked, before shaking his head and turning his back on Izuku. You know what, yeah. You take those 3, I'll take these 3. The nameless man spoke up, and Izuku nodded, grinning. Right. Let's do this. Izuku exclaimed.
Pwopsh. Pop.
Crackle, crackle. His quirk roaring once more. Despite this being a competition, the boy is taking it on himself to help other examinees. The cloning pro hero, Ectoplasm, finally spoke up, being quiet for the duration of the judging for the most part. Say what you want about the man, Cementos. Midnight flicked her wrist and pointed a finger at the boy, but that young man certainly has the spotlight at the moment. While that may be true, Cementos responded, watching the boy carefully, he has only but a fraction of time to really show it. A little over 6 minutes left, to be precise. If he really wants to be in this school, he's going to have to make it count. We got a quirk match, Nedzu, sir. A faculty member exclaimed, catching everyone's attention as one of the big screens came to show, none other than Katsuki Bakugo, blasting away robots with his quirk. Katsuki Bakugo, examinee number 2233. His quirk and Izuku Midoriya's sudden quirk are an exact match. A copy of the same quirk? Nedzu asked, curious. Yagi's eyes widened. Wait, young Midoriya's power isn't even his own. Yagi immediately thought, his throat drying up at the thought. Are you suggesting that Izuku Midoriya copied Katsuki Bakugo's quirk? Ectoplasm asked, his face meeting the faculty members, and said member shrunk. It's uncertain. However, it's very possible. Another examinee. He pulled up another young man by the name of Nito Monoma, who was seemingly brushing past heroes, then using the most recent hero's quirk to defeat the robots. Examinee number 5179, Nito Monoma. He has a quirk that copies anyone else's quirk, simply by touch. By touch, you said? Midnight spoke, confused. But that can't be the case, right? She pointed at Katsuki, then at Izuku. These two are at separate battle centers, are they not? I can tell just by looking at the scenery. That's right, Midnight's in. A faculty member reported, Katsuki Bakugo is currently located at Battle Center B, while Izuku Midoriya is at Battle Center A. Izuku was nowhere near the other boy when his quirk showed up. Interesting, very interesting. Nedzu was kicking his legs, a smile on its face. We seem to have quite the interesting roster going on here. I can't wait to see who will prevail. Oh. Power Loader, the excavation pro hero, watched both Katsuki and Izuku with mild surprise. Even if both quirks are a copy, the way they use them is completely different. He pointed at Katsuki briefly. He uses them solely for destroying the villains, in quick and creative ways, but then he pointed at Izuku. He's been using his quirk to save fellow examinees. This is his 3rd save in a row. I wonder if he knows the secret of this exam already? Third save. Present Mike exclaimed, taken aback by the boy's guts. That kid's insane. And even then, he looked towards Nedzu, exasperated. Shouldn't we be tallying this kid's score up by now? When do we rate him? Once he finishes his saving spree, of course. Nedzu replied calmly, his legs still kicking. If he returns back to just defeating villain robots, that'll give us the moment to give him the rating for his performance. He gave Yamaha an eye smile. I've been watching him this entire time, and he's putting up quite a show. For now, Yamaha-san, give the time to our examinees. Would you kindly? Got it. And I'm rooting for the little guy. He's turning out to be quite the underdog. Present Mike left with those parting words, heading outside of the judge's corner once again. 5 minutes, 2 seconds. Izuku heard Present Mike call out the time, and a tiny chill ran up his spine at the sudden call. 5 minutes? Already. Izuku cried out, before shaking his head. No, I mustn't lose focus. I'm already getting a big head start, a whopping 18 points, using Kaken's quirk. He overheard robots being smashed from the distance, and noticed the uptight man that told him about his heroic nature, smashing a robot with efficiency. All right, he spoke loudly, catching his footing as he made the landing. That makes 42. FO 42. He felt the confidence he once had completely drained from his body as his hands trembled. Arelise. He heard a familiar voice and turned to see the very same girl he met at the entrance of Yude, dropping multiple robots onto the ground, disabling them as she wiped her brow. Phew, that's 28 points. 28. Izuku immediately thought about the girl's quirk, the one that simply caught the boys fall back in the entrance. If a quirk like that could rack up 28 points easily, then dash. Whatever, Deku. No matter what quirk you have, it's not going to compare to mine. Young Kaken's words rang clear in his mind as he clenched his fists. I have no excuse to slack off with Kaken's quirk. He screamed in the back of his head and with a worried face, sought out more robots to defeat. Examinee spotted. Hearing a familiar mantra, he turned to find a one-pointer approaching him cautiously. Izuku, with a panicked look, held out his hand. Eat this gakak. Izuku suddenly reeled back his hand, as he felt something similar to his muscles being sprained, almost torn, and in pain. Stepping back a little, he looked down at his hand. It was trembling, twitching, and incredibly dry, as if it ran out of fuel or fire to run on. Izuku's fears magnified as he looked back up to the robot to see it charging at him.
Die!
It exclaimed, and Izuku simply reeled back and guarded his face, losing his only real edge in the fight, until he heard the robot suddenly getting smashed and pulled down his arms to see none other than the uptight man, using his legs to break open the frail robot. There. Now we're even, he spoke, catching Izuku's attention as he brushed himself off. I don't like feeling the need to owe another a favor, especially not for so long. Glad that's sorted out. You saved me. Thank you, Izuku exclaimed, and the man shook his head. Think nothing of it. And my name's not you. He placed a hand on his chest. I'm Tenya Ida, from Somei Academy. And you are? Izuku branched at the sudden introduction. I Izuku Midoriya. Nice to meet you. The pleasure's mine. Let's not waste any more time. And with that, he made a break for it, and Izuku noticed his legs spitting out fumes, and then noticed the engines growing on the back of his legs.
Cool.
Izuku shook his head and focused back on his hand. And now's not the time. Come on, you need to have Kaken's quirk back up and running if you want to pass. He gripped his wrists hard and focused on making the explosions come back again.
Pop.
And they did, only to cause Izuku more pain. He closed both his eyes in response, before opening one in confusion, looking toward his hand. I don't understand. Kaken never had this problem, as far as I know. Something like this isn't supposed to happen? Why? He thought back to Kaken and how easy he used his quirk before. Am I just unlucky? Can I not use Kaken's quirk as much as he can? Tears sprinkled the side of Izuku's face as he put more pressure on his wrist. No, I can't think of that. Not here. Not now.
Pa.
G-chararar. Izuku gritted his teeth as another surge of pain shot through his arm. Come on! Izuku cried out in his head, staring hard at his hand which refused to give out the amazing quirk anymore. Come on! While the other judges talked about the other examinees, Nezu noticed Izuku's plight and had a small, sad smile. Finally reached your limit, my friend. It's better now than later, I suppose. Oh. It seems the young man finally stopped saving others. Midnight noticed as well, before looking at Nezu. Shall we give him the rating now? Nezu jumped out of his seat and shook his head. Nope. I have a better idea. He then pointed at the faculty staff. Release the 0-pointer. It's time to wrap this test up. Oh boy.
Present Mike exclaimed.
About time. Cementos spoke evenly. Yagi was still silent, watching as the faculty confirmed the opening of the button labeled determination switch before pressing it, leading to the release of the 0-pointer. Young man, it is time, he thought, looking back at the screen where Izuku was, where he was seen holding out his hand. It's time to make this count. Now or never. Rumbling, faint but disturbing rumbling could be felt around the area, and Izuku Midoriya was not one to ignore it. Releasing his hand, he looked around to find the source of it. An earthquake. Izuku first thought immediately, before noticing a large shadow appear and began slowly turning around. And there it was, a giant, overbearing robot that seemed to scale even the tallest buildings in the battle center. Its shadow scaled far and wide across the roads and skyscrapers. The huge robot just screamed, "Fear me! No way! Is that?" Izuku's body stiffened up, looking at the beast of a machine. The fourth and final robot is simply an obstacle we will be throwing at you sometime during the duration of the exam. Izuku watched with cold fear all over his body as the robot motioned to slam and smash through buildings left and right. Numerous examines were running away from the robot running past him, but Izuku couldn't do anything except look at the robot in fear. Even if you do manage to defeat it, he will be worth only 0 points, so don't go slamming him down expecting for an encore. That has to be the 0-pointer. Izuku's mind clicked into place as his body began moving. It's not worth anything, just an obstacle. So I need to run, get out of here, and find more robots. Tripping on his own feet, he felt fear cloud his movements and decisions, and he was left scrambling on the ground, trying to get up. Come on, move. I can't stand around. Move. He felt scared, sick, and most importantly, frustrated. His quirk didn't work properly, and he was left with less points than other examinees. At this rate, he wasn't sure that he was going to pass. Less than 2 minutes remaining. Present Mike exclaimed, and Izuku's pressure peaked. What? Only 2 minutes. Izuku's eyes continued to water as he held his mouth. He thought he had a chance, a shining beacon of hope when Kaken's quirk appeared. He felt unstoppable, as powerful as Kaken himself. If he only knew there'd be a limit, then he wouldn't waste it on. Hey kid, you ain't so bad after all. Thanks for saving me before my goose gets cooked. One of the examinees that helped him said that before, and he froze up. Would he really have had an easier time? But I must. What you did for me, Izuku remembered Ida's words, was a heroic act. And I respect that. Would he really have an easier time if he had simply ignored the others, instead of saving them? Young man, for the umpteenth time, All Might's words rang clear in Izuku's head. You, too, can become a hero. If he couldn't save others, then what was the point of him becoming a hero at all?
Ow!
Izuku froze, hearing the girl back in the entrance exam cry out in pain as he turned towards the menacing robot to find none other than the same girl, stuck under a pile of rubble of concrete, her leg locked in an uncomfortable position, her face displayed with pain and trouble. She could barely get up to a crouched position. She was trapped. Izuku stopped thinking entirely. His mind halted and ceased thinking about all the problems he faced. Not Kaken's quirk. Not the points, no matter how slim. Not the robot. To her, The first person that this place has shown any kind gesture to him. That helped him, saved him from something as simple as embarrassment. Even if it was a simple, small gesture. I stopped your fall with my quirk. I know I should have asked, but I had a feeling that it would be better than kissing the ground, right? Compared to everything before. Deku is also another way of saying useless.
What?
It's in your name, so it has to be true. Yeah, Kaken's right, Deku. Since when is he ever wrong? One of them said. Yeah, what he said. What's wrong? Deku. Can't handle the truth. Save her. Oh no. Deku's gonna be in so much trouble. Do not call me Kaken again. You hear me? I make you regret it. Save her. Sorry, kid, it isn't going to happen. With this extra pinky toe joint, you're simply not going to develop a quirk. I'm so sorry, Izuku. You're just a quirkless loser. A hero wannabe. Are you still thinking about applying to UT, eh? Get real. You're much better off going to some other course. Without a quirk, you're nothing. Save her. You're quirkless. And, for some reason, that suited man's words suddenly rang forth. Izuku didn't know the man, and yet, his words made him feel pure fury. If I don't. Izuku's legs resumed function, and Izuku got up immediately. He faced the robot. Then who will? Letting out a grunt, he sprinted, right toward the metal beast. PAW pop. PWPPPPP. Izuku heard fireworks coming from his other arm, but he couldn't care less at its sudden appearance, unable to feel the pain anymore. His body was on full autopilot. Its course, to save the girl. An overwhelming feeling of power crashed through him as he stood in front of the robot, crouched surging one for all, the quirk that was on the back of his mind since Kaken's quirk appeared, suddenly taking full effect. And Izuku launched, soaring through the sky like a plane and F-35 fighter jet. Even faster. He threaded in between the robot's fingers and flew fast towards the robot's face. When you're ready to use my quirk, clench your butt cheeks as tight as you can manage. All Might could be here repeating how his quirk was performed as Izuku pet his fist back.
Shack. Pop.
Using his right hand, the very same hand that Kaken's quirk was irregularly popping from, he channeled one for all through the arm, pumped it with energy, the sheer power coming out of his skin, ripping the remaining part of his tracksuit. And scream from the bottom of your heart. Izuku repeated All Might's words and followed through with them crystal clear, as his arm eclipsed with strength Kaken's quirk, silent. Izuku's voice roared, loud and strong, as he threw the punch, Smaash. What was a simple punch, ignited into flame. Qua, Vio, OM. And a violent, mother-of-all-bomb-level explosion racked the entire city as the robot's upper torso was destroyed to smithereens. And all of the examinees, present at Battle Station A, were stunned to say the least. Not gonna lie, kid. You had me worried there for a second. Yagi was talking to himself as most of the other judges were cheering for the boy's heroic act. I was hoping you would show the same display of heroism that you've showed back when we first met. He passed a glance at the other judges, and while some of them were more forthright in displaying their excitement for the scene, others at least had a smile on their face, showing the pleasure in what they just saw, because if you want in this school, you have to go beyond just being a hero. Yagi looked back at the screen, taking note of how any examinee viewed in that moment was immobile, rooted in their places, looking at the boy in shock. And there is nothing more heroic than self-sacrifice. PSH. Numerous windows, destroyed by the sudden velocity of the explosion, rained glass down to the roads and shattered on the floor. The robot was violently hurled back as it came smashing onto the ground in a heap of unmoving steel, numerous embers sprinkled on top of the destroyed carcass of a machine. When numerous bystanders watched the scene, they were at first in awe until the sound of the explosion came crashing into their ears, the many lot of them choosing to cover their ears as soon as they received the unpleasant earwaves.
Boom.
Standing on top of a heap of robots, Katsuki raised an eyebrow at the sound of a warhead going off before snickering it away. Sounds like somebody's just died, I bet. Kakin joked with himself, cocky with his combat prowess as he jumped off the pile. Oh well. Just means less competition for me. The judges noticed the cascading amounts of damage appearing around the area and watched with bated breath as examinees narrowly avoided falling glass and debris caused by the explosion. Isn't this getting a bit out of hand? One of the faculty members exclaimed as he stood from his seat. This couldn't have been caused by the robot, could it? The robots have been designed to maintain minimal damages when destroyed. This is not the robot's fault, Power Loader responded curtly. Then, that means dash. Yagi's eyes widened at the implications, and his mouth opened. Midoriya? Did your quirk and one for all mix? Izuku, recovering from his sudden drive of adrenaline, felt gravity press itself on his back once more and felt the rush of wind blow past his face. He looked down just to see how high up he was, only to see. He was, at this point, skydiving higher than the buildings around him, and he couldn't help but to scream. His voice came out, and he felt the vibrations, but everything he heard was muted, muffled, almost like earphones was placed on his head, but he couldn't focus on that now. Crap! Midoriya cursed, watching as the ground came closer into view. I didn't think of an exit strategy. I wouldn't think that I'd be so high up. Okay, think Midoriya. You can use one for all to land just like All Might, right? So, just do that. Yeah, just. Despite his brain signaling his body to move, he felt no response come from his legs or his arm.
He looked to see.
Broken, mangled messes of limbs flopping in the wind with no control. Izuku felt the shock rattle his entire being. My body's broken? No way. Was this because of one for all? Izuku tried to hold his arm, to put it into place, but felt tremendous amounts of pain from doing so. Izuku once again felt tears spring past his eye ducts. That's right. All Might said so himself. Now listen, you've taken this quirk under a seriously short notice. I can't say you can use this quirk and come out without a scratch. Izuku felt his hot tears fly past his face, up to the air. So in the exams, be prepared for some kickback. Okay. I didn't listen to him. I failed. And now? No. Izuku shook his head and clenched his teeth. I can't lose focus here. I need to use All Might's ability and save myself from crashing. He reeled back his punch. If my arm breaks, then I can't continue the exams. Even if I have 18 points. Izuku felt uncertainty fill his being as the road got closer and closer. Will 18 points be enough? It's so small compared to everyone else. How can I pass with just 18 points? Izuku felt a scream piercing his throat, but he still couldn't hear anything at all. Everything was silent, and it just made the fast-approaching demise that much more terrifying. I can't do it too soon, or too late, or else I'd be paced. Izuku felt fear frantically run up and down his spine. I have to do it. I have to do it, even if I won't be able to do the exam anymore. If I don't, I really will die.
Slap.
Izuku felt his cheeks burn a hot flash of pain as his face forcefully tilted to his right, before feeling his body press upwards and made an incredibly fast stop above the ground before he could crash into it. He then felt gravity return, but his body only slammed uncomfortably onto the ground, his broken limbs rattling onto the floor. He looked to his left to see the same girl that saved him from embarrassment, and immediately put two and two together, his eyes widening. She saved my life. She must have broke my fall with her quirk. His eyes meet the ground as he bit his lip. I really owe her for the save, but now. Izuku, using his free, fully moving hand, he pressed hard on the ground and pushed himself forward, moving at a snail's pace on the ground. Thanks to her, now I can have a chance to get more points. I just need more points. Izuku cursed under his breath as he pushed at the ground, tears filling his cheeks. I don't have enough. $73.9. Izuku thought he heard Present Mic for a second, but it only came to his ears as a mumbled mess. He could also hear the faint wailing of a siren, but thought nothing of it. Still pushing himself on the hard ground, his eyes darted past the watching examinees. looking for a robot that was moving. Just 2 more points at least. Please. Uraraka Ochako, the zero-gravity girl that saved Izuku from his fall, could be seen resting on the metal pile that was once a part of a robot she previously defeated. Using this metal pile before to reach Izuku, she had to levitate herself, the pile, and eventually Izuku once she rose high enough to meet him head-on. Unable to handle the strain of it, along with the previous exhaustion she had after the duration of the exam, she promptly puked out the contents of her lunch after she had released her quirk. She overheard the young boy talking about his points being too low and felt immensely guilty for being a burden to him. Because of her, he would sacrifice a good amount of points that would have helped him pass the exam. His sacrifice would not go in vain, she had decided, and made sure that after the written exam, she would head to where the pro heroes were and ask for them to give him some of her points even if it costed her the chance of entering UA as well. Time's up. Present Mike called, halting everyone's movements any further as a siren wailed to accompany the end of the practical exam. Uraraka's guilt for the boy the hero that saved her magnified, but felt too tired to make any motion to respond to it. Just 2 more points at least. Please. Uraraka Ochako was then confused, once the boy said that, and looked toward him only to see the man still moving against the ground, his eyes filled with tears. Did he not notice Present Mike say that the exam was over? Uraraka thought, tired, before feeling something warm and stick on her hand the hand she used to slap Izuku, and therefore, use her quirk on him. Her eyes widened. Meeting her hand was a familiar, red liquid she knew all too well. Blood. Uraraka felt her body stiffen, looking at the foreign substance. Is that for me? But I didn't. She then looked towards Izuku, or rather, inspected Izuku's body. It didn't take long to notice that there was, indeed, blood present on his face. Her eyes widened when she noticed the source of the blood. The man's ears were bleeding profusely. She immediately understood the situation he was in. He can't hear anything. Uraraka felt her previous fatigue leave her as she carried her body and lifted herself off the heap of metal she used as a platform. Oh God, he's deaf. The explosion from earlier. She tripped on a spare pipe that was laying on the ground. GH! She let out a grunt, but didn't stop as she started crawling her way towards him and grabbed his shirt. Hey! Hey! Uraraka then noticed the limbs that were sprawled around the floor in irregular positions, and her eyes shook from the sight of them. He's a mess. He can't go on like this. Stop.
Please.
She pleaded desperately, the guilt she felt from before making her voice emotional, catching the other examinee's attention. Izuku felt a slight tug on his shirt and felt muffled noises from his side. Curiosity getting the best of him, he looked to see the nice girl he saved and saved him back, tugging on his shirt, kneeling toward him. He could easily tell she was tired, from the way her body was leaning. It desperately wanted to fall over, but her face it screamed panic. His attention was on her, as he wondered why she was so desperate looking at him until she opened her mouth to speak. _534, RM3. Izuku blanched when he heard only muffles come out and became incredibly confused as to why he couldn't hear her. Judging by the look on his face, Ochako could tell he couldn't hear a thing he was saying and tightened her face with determination. She tilted her head slightly, so her ear was present, and she pointed toward it. Izuku watched as the girl moved slightly, then suddenly pointed toward her ear. He looked at the gesture with confusion, then it clicked. Can you hear me? That was what the girl said, but he could only tell from the way her lips moved, which meant no. He could not hear her, but why? It was then he felt, on the backs of his face, a foreign liquid that caused a minor irritation to his nerves. With a shaky hand, using the only arm he had functioning, he pressed his ears and felt something sticky and warm, drying up quickly on the sides of his face. His eyes narrowed, and he brought his hand to the front of his face, only to find his fingertips painted with his blood. Could he not hear her, because his ears were damaged? Before he could even deduce what that meant in the grand scheme of things, he could feel the effects of everything: fatigue, blood loss, pain, all bringing his body to a cold, hard stop. He passed out on the spot, not knowing whether or not the exam was finished. Ochako could only watch as the boy fell down, stopping his movement entirely, and immediately thought the worst. With worried eyes, she looked towards the examinees. Somebody, please help. This person is seriously hurt. Is anyone a doctor?" She cried out, unsure whether to call 119 or not while being on the grounds. "Recovery girl is who you'll need." She watched a blonde boy, with a calm demeanor on his face, step forward with a swish of his hair. "She's the very heart of you. If anyone is capable of healing him back to 100%, it's her. Then, can somebody please find her and get her here, quickly?" Uraraka called, and some of the examinees looked towards one another, until, "I'll go." Uraraka looked towards a tall man with blue hair, his glasses shining against the sunlight. "I'll head back to the entrance, and ask the staff there for this recovery girl." All the way to the entrance. "Can you make it?" Uraraka exclaimed in surprise, and the man nodded. "With my quirk, it'll be easy." Facing away, he crouched into a runner's position. "Please keep watch over Izuku until then." And with that, he made a run for it, his legs spewing fire as he reached incredible speeds. Uraraka let out a heavy sigh, depending on the man to bring recovery girl here quickly. He looked down at the boy that was on the ground. "Izuku, huh?" she thought, recalling what the man said. She had a conflicted, troubled look sent towards Izuku, simply just worried that the boy was going to get himself in the hospital, just to save her. But then, she thought of how quick he was to jump in and rescue her, as well as how strong he was defeating the robot with a single punch. She then smiled, her eyes glowing with respect. "Thank you for saving me, Izuku." While what the boy did was incredible. Yagi watched the judges discuss amongst themselves, choosing not to opt in. "We simply cannot ignore the pure destruction caused by the quirk he has," and Cementos was just as harsh as he ever was against the boy. Many judges have felt proud over what Izuku did in the situation, but only until have they assessed the damages did they take a more critical evaluation. But his quirk is incredible. Not to mention the pure potential it has with somebody who helps others, compared to that other boy, Bakugo, who simply chose to fight villains. Midnight spoke her reason, once again against the cement-covered hero. To lose a boy like that is to lose another great hero. Taught in our school. There are many great heroes here, Midnight-san. It would be unfair to single out one boy among the rest. Ectoplasm spoke, as he looked at Cementos. "And I agree with Cementos, if he is to be taught here, it must be under a watchful eye." "You're talking about not singling the audience out, aren't you?" "Oh man, I can smell the irony from here." Present Mike tuned in. "We need no watchful eyes in our school. That rock star just needs a bit more polish to shine bright, just like anybody else here at our school." "I already know my rating," he smiled, and a bling on his teeth could be seen. "The boy certainly has the strength down." Power Loader began talking, and his heroic deeds are not misplaced, but using moves like large explosions have to be taken into consideration and moderation, else they could easily be mislabeled as acts of terrorism in the real world, rather than actions of a hero. It's quite clear that our opinions for young Izuku Midoriya are spread out quite unevenly. Nedza nodded, hearing each of the judges' voices, and said heroes went silent to hear their leader out. But please, do not forget to factor in his previous actions beforehand, like we all previously agreed. He has saved 3 other examinees beforehand, not including young Tenya Ida, which we have already given a rating for. This will be a total rating, one that adds onto Izuku's previous score of 15 rescue points. Netsu looked onward to the screen, watching the young girl Izuku saved sit next to the boy's side, and as heroes, you must recognize those that have budding talent, and those that have none whatsoever. Nedza looked at the judges. "Now then, everyone, please give the ratings with fairness in mind. How much score does everyone deserve? Who has earned the privilege to be in a high?" Yagi watched the discussion unfold before him, a feeling of uneasiness washing over his body. If he had just used one for all by itself, simply to enhance his strength, this divide between the judges wouldn't have been made. Yagi proceeded to hold his head, a headache forming amongst the chatter of his neighbors. Young man, I pray that you haven't messed up your chances before they could even happen. I'm so jealous, an examinee commented from afar, and Uraraka bit her lip, ignoring the comment. Currently, Uraraka was kneeling on the ground, with Izuku's head on her lap. Convinced that having the injured boy just lying on the ground wasn't suitable for the heroic deeds he had done for her, she took charge of the situation. And the feedback was less than desirable, to say the least. Oh man, that guy's seriously lucky, another replied, and Uraraka bit her lip just a bit harder. It's a shame that he's out cold. He'd be having the time of his life. Just a bit longer, Ochako, you can do this. Uraraka talked to herself in her head, mustering the courage not to attack the examinees that were embarrassing her right now. That guy said he'd come back as soon as possible, right? I'm sure he'll be coming any second. Ochako snapped back into attention when she heard the sound of a man running towards them, the other examinees' voices dying down shortly after. She looked to see the man that said he would get Recovery Girl return, and noticed that he had an elderly woman on his back. My, you young people sure know how to get around quick, the lady exclaimed mirthfully, not fazed in the slightest at Ida's speed using his quirk. My sincerest apologies, but I had to bring you here as soon as possible. Like I said, he turned towards Ochako and Izuku. It is of utmost importance. Well now, she began walking up to the two. A big needle in her hand was used like a cane. I don't suppose this boy is the one in need of attention? She then looked at Ochako and smiled. How kind of you to lend this poor boy your lap. He really must be something to you. Th, that's not it at all, she exclaimed, blushing at the kind grandma's words, frantically waving her hands. It's just this man I mean. This person saved me from the robot, and hurt himself for doing so. I didn't want him lying on the ground, so having him on my lap was the last I could do. She spewed out her logic, and the grandma just laughed. Sure, I understand, dear, she replied, and Uraraka's blush magnified. I'm serious. She cried out in dismay, convinced that she was going to die in embarrassment. Recovery Girl approached the duo, looking at Izuku more carefully. Oh my goodness, you kids were right. He's got quite a few injuries on him, doesn't he? Without mentioning any more, her lips suddenly extended, right towards the top of the boy's head, catching everyone off guard as Izuku received a kiss from the old lady. And everyone reeled back in disgust, even Ochako, who had the front seats of the event. I'll take back what I said before, about that man being lucky. One of the examinees spoke up again, turning away from the sight. Ew. Ochako then noticed a green aura appear around Izuku, and all of his injuries began healing back up. His legs locked back into their normal shape, and his arm once again regained his normal color. There. Good as new. The lady responded in kind, before facing the examinees. Okay, line up everyone. I have something to give all of you. Wait, Ochako exclaimed, catching the old lady's attention. I'm sorry, Ms. Recovery Girl, but he also couldn't hear me before. He might have gotten ear damage as well. Are you sure he's fine? She asked, worried deeply for the boy that risked his life for hers. The old lady simply laughed. It's been a while since my quirk was tested, ho ho. Recovery Girl laughed, before walking over to her, and held out her hand towards Ochako. Ochako blinked, before holding her hands out, and received gummies? Bear gummies, to be exact. She gave the nurse a confused look. Worry not, dear. Your friend will be just fine. But, since you're so concerned, she looked towards the boy with the engine quirk and spoke again. Ida-kun, would you be so kind as to carry Izuku back to my office? Ask the staff back at the entrance, and they'll tell you where it is. Of course. I'd be glad to do this request for you, ma'am. Ida motioned towards Ochako, and Izuku picked the boy up carefully. Ochako, feeling the weight on her lap disappear, looked up towards Ida. Ida-kun. Ochako stuttered, making sure she spoke his name correctly, and she received the attention of the young man. Thank you for helping me out. And my name's Ochako Uraraka. I hope we can be friends in the future. Ida blinked at the sudden friend request, before nodding all the same. Mine is Tenya Ida, and I wish for the same as well, but He looked at the boy on his back, a solemn smile on his face. Save that thank you for Izuku here. After all, he's the one that saved you, right? Our Ochako nodded, happy to receive a positive response from the man. Right. Now all that is said and done, everyone come here and get some gummies for me. Recovery Girl exclaimed, and the examinees approached her. They'll give you back your strength for the written exam. Just make sure you eat only one at a time, okay? Now then, do we have our ratings? Nedzu asked the group, and the board of judges held out their signs, making their final decisions. Yagi passed a glance at each of the points from their respective judges and cursed under his breath. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. He's receiving less points than what he could have gotten. He held his head, conflicted about the new information, about Izuku's sudden new quirk. Had Midoriya avoided giving off that huge explosion with both of his quirks, he would have received a near-perfect score for just using one for all, but... On the other hand, if Izuku's quirk hadn't shown up, Yagi glanced at the huge board of points, rounded up to the top 500. Soon noticing Izuku Midoriya, listed with 18 villain points and 15 rescue points, he was only ranked at the bottom 400s. He would not have been able to use one for all anyway, if it meant destroying his body in order to do so. Yagi played the scenario in his head multiple times, over and over again, and just kept thinking that Izuku would be unable to really defeat any robots with just one for all alone. Yagi closed his eyes, a sigh escaping his lips. Maybe this was the better route after all. Then it settled. Nedzu exclaimed, and Yagi looked towards him with a worrisome look, as Nedzu gestured at the faculty staff. Staff, if you would be so kind as to update the board, please? Nedzu's eyes beamed with light. It's about time we got a good idea on who our next year's students will be. Yagi watched the board flash, with all the new information present, and immediately noticed that Izuku Midoriya wasn't in the same spot as before. His eyes shifted to the higher numbers from the 300s to the 200s to the 100s. Oh my! Yagi's mouth opened wide, and his eyes widened at the sight. Izuku, you've actually... Izuku Midoriya woke up to the pleasantly unpleasant smell of hospital sheets and perfume, finding himself laying on one of its beds as an occupant. What happened? Izuku held his head, trying to remember the events that happened beforehand. Did I black out?
Wait.
Is the exam finished? He ripped the blankets of him and jumped on his feet. No way. I need to head to the written exam. Relax, young man, relax. Izuku's body jumped at the sudden new voice, as he looked to see a small, old lady walk up to him with a needle like a cane at hand. There's no need to rush. You've just gotten out of bed, so you need time to recuperate, she spoke, and Izuku then realized who she was. Why, you're a recovery girl. Indeed, Izuku's research on the pro-heroes of Yube certainly helped, as a pleased smile appeared on the lady's face at being recognized. So that means... I had to be sent to your office to be healed. He then noticed his limbs being completely functional, compared to before when he used one for all with them. You've healed me completely, and with such a short notice. Izuku looked at the doctor. Thank you. You have no need to thank me, young man. And it seems your ears are working just fine too, correct? She spoke, and Izuku became confused. And my ears? Before he remembered how he wasn't hearing anything. Wait, my ears. Were they injured too? Yes, but they're all better now, thanks to me. She spoke, before pointing at a monitor next to her, repeating the scene of him blowing up the giant zero-pointer, and Izuku gasped at seeing himself deliver such a violent explosion to the robot. That was from me? Izuku asked, not once remembering seeing Kaken display such a ferocious blast from his quirk. He looked down at his hand. Was this because one for all strengthened my body as well? Isn't it just a strength enhancement quirk? He asked, and the lady coughed, giving him her attention. Young man, I'm not happy in the slightest for destroying your body the way you've did, protecting that girl. She spoke, and Izuku reeled back at the harsh words. It seems to me like your quirk has just recently developed, with just how rash you were using it during the entirety of the exam. What you did was complete overkill. Izuku remembered Ida's words at that moment, and he looked down to the ground as Recovery Girl continued. You could have seriously hurt yourself more, you know? You could have given yourself shell shock, or blown one of your limbs right off. Her voice turned harsher, and Izuku began sweating profusely, before looking at her slightly. Shell shock? Izuku asked meekly, unsure whichever the two worst-case scenarios she mentioned was, well, worse. PTSD. She spoke like a knife was her tongue, cutting with such cold anger as Izuku shrunk again. Post-traumatic stress disorder. And with an explosion like that, you'd be hearing it, feeling it, non-stop, no matter if you were using it. My quirk can do many things, and judging by how you recognized me right away, you seem to know this, Recovery Girl continued before pointing at him. But it can't fix everything. I can't make limbs magically grow back, nor can I fix any mental problems you incur on yourself. The point, young man, she faced him completely and held out her needle in front of her, placing it firmly on the ground, is to never do this again, you understand? Right. I understand. Izuku squeaked out, in despair, and Recovery Girl couldn't help but sigh. She glared at the boy. You mustn't use your quirk like you have today. Practice control and DSPLN. Never go out of bounds like this, or else you won't just risk hurting others. You will be hurting innocents, too. Innocents? Izuku spoke out loud, clenching his wrist hard at the info. Kaken's quirk. She's right. I can't use it perfectly right now. If I were to use it among other heroes. A big kaboom appeared in his head, and what once stood All Might, stood only his almighty shoes. Despite the comical image, Izuku paled horribly at the sight of accidentally blowing up his role model. Take what I said today in consideration, and hopefully the next time I see you, you'll be in much better condition to use your quirk. Recovery Girl spoke, handing him some of the gummies that were given to the other examinees, as well as a pink note with written info on it. Take these gummies, one at a time, during the test. The info on that card will lead you to your room that will hold the written portion of the exam. I wish you luck. Recovery Girl finished her speech. Speaking of which, Izuku immediately held back his voice that came out too loudly, and Recovery Girl looked back with a small look of irritation. I got 18 points during the practical exam, defeating those robots. Do I have a chance at getting into you? Izuku asked, almost pleaded for the answer, and caught Recovery Girl slightly off guard. For a moment, Recovery Girl smiled, which brought a glimmer of hope inside Izuku, until... I'm sorry, sweetie, she spoke, making Izuku blink in surprise as she continued. That's not information I can give out freely. I apologize. Oh. Izuku, not satisfied with the answer, looked down at the card given to him. But don't give up hope, young man. He immediately looked back at Recovery Girl, who was giving him a thumbs up. Just perform as strongly as you did on the practical exam, onto the written exam, and it should all be worthwhile. I'm sure of it. All right. Izuku, much more pleased hearing that, nodded. I will. Just don't start exploding the room when you come across a hard question, okay, dear? I won't, Izuku said in stark contrast to before, embarrassed by the old lady's words. Izuku gulped loudly, as the only ones who were present in the room were him and a weird sleeping, yellow bag of a teacher laying on the ground. He was taking the exam, pencil in hand as he answered each question to the best of his ability. For once, Izuku was happy that all of these answers seemed easy enough thanks to All Might's training plan, his studying seemingly paying off. But Izuku's mind was rattled, swimming with questions that he could not find answers to. Did he make it? With only 18 points, did he stand a chance at entering? Or was he doomed to fail despite taking the written portion right now? Izuku's hand started shaking, as he felt almost helpless at the situation, hot tears already forming in the corner of his eyes. Just perform as strongly as you did on the practical exam, onto the written exam, and it should all be worthwhile. I'm sure of it. Despite how positive it sounded before, Izuku couldn't help but think about how general-sounding it was, and how it didn't say firmly to him, yes, you passed. Or no, you failed. Have faith, young Midoriya. Just then, All Might's words rang clear, and Izuku's trembling ceased, as his face was filled with determination once again. I can't give up now. All Might's counting on me. Izuku began furiously writing the answers once again, and I won't let him down. Yawn. The teacher was found standing once again, as he looked down at Izuku holding his exam properly. Done already? That was quick. You didn't cheat, did you? Izuku stiffened. And no, of course not.
Good.
Didn't want to go through the trouble of going through the camera footage. Izuku gasped and looked around the room, something that he noticed. Don't bother, it's well hidden. You wouldn't know where to look anyway. Oh. Izuku then looked at the teacher holding out his hand, and followed with giving the papers to him. The teacher looked through the papers, making Izuku immensely nervous, before blanching once the teacher just shrugged afterwards. Doesn't seem forged. Oh well. You'll want to make your way back to the entrance after getting your stuff. Within a week, you'll know whether or not you made it in. Take care. The teacher made a reach for his yellow sleeping bag, and Izuku blinked at his dismissal. If that's it then? I have to wait a week to know if I pass or not? Izuku's hands clenched as he willed the determination to ask one of the strongest questions, burning on his mind. Teacher, Izuku started. It's Aizawa. Izuku recoiled at the sudden answer, suddenly meeting eye to eye with the person he was asking the question to. Teach then, Aizawa-sensei. Just Aizawa. The man's tone was forceful, making Izuku shrink in shock. I'm not your teacher, unless you have a class with me, he explained, his voice commanding. Izuku noticed. Until then, it's Aizawa. Oh, okay. Aizawa. Izuku gulped once again, before returning back to his senses. I only received 18 villain points during the practical exam. Looking up at the not his teacher Aizawa, he continued. Will it be enough for me to get into you, eh? For a moment, Aizawa was silent, giving Izuku uncertainty before he sighed deeply, something Izuku was not expecting. Kid, I'm going to be frankly honest here. We teachers aren't allowed to give out answers to questions like that. Izuku looked down, not sure whether he was expecting something different for an answer until. But with a score like that. Then, Izuku looked up when Aizawa continued talking, only to be met with a hard glare. You should throw away the hope of getting into A, and instead start practicing more on your quirk for next year's exam. Izuku blinked, then his face slowly turned into confusion. Duh. Izuku asked quietly, and the man snickered, laughed at him. Don't what me, kid. You, of all people, should know the answer yourself. Aizawa shrugged. I mean, 18 points alone is a stretch to be top 500 with how many participants coming in today. So, let's be realistic here. Izuku, hearing this, went numb, as the man walked towards the exit. Unless you ace this written exam with flying colors, which I assure you haven't. Izuku's heart throbbed at the awful words, preparing defenses once again after the longest time, since before All Might came into his life. Then you won't be getting in that easily. Unless, by some slide of luck, you manage to earn yourself a place at UD-A, then you have proved me wrong. Don't get mad at me, kid. You wanted a straightforward answer. He called, and Izuku turned towards him. Only for the teacher's back to face Izuku. I'm only saying this for your own good.
Goodbye.
Closing the door, Izuku stood in the middle of the classroom, a classroom he might never see again until next year. Izuku felt hot tears trace down his cheek, but this time, he made no motion to stop him. A familiar feeling of his glass world that he desperately tried to fix from before, ever since he was told he could become a hero, began shattering once again. Izuku had a shaded look on his face as he walked past the entrance of the school, his hands holding firmly on the arms of his backpack as his eyes continuously met the ground, unable to look at UD-A like he once did at the start. His mind was clouded with dark, depressive thoughts as every step he took away from the school was akin to him stepping away from his dream as a hero. He felt like he let everyone down. He felt like he let All Might down. Maybe he just wasn't meant for one for all like he thought? Maybe he was just lucky to earn such a thing, and that was that? No matter. He'll hear from All Might again soon. He was sure of it. Whether that was a good thing or not was to be decided. You. Izuku snapped out of his funk and looked up to see, in his surprise, the girl he had saved earlier before. She had a bright smile, just like the start of the day, as she ran towards him. I'm surprised to see you out here, so late. Must have taken the written exam after you woke up, huh? She then pointed at him with mirth in her eyes. Your name's Izuku, right? How do you know my name? Izuku responded, embarrassed, but not to his usual lengths like before. She gleamed. Ida-kun told me, she then caught herself before rubbing the back of her head. He only told me your first name, so I don't really know your last name, and… She coughed into her hand, catching herself before she could needlessly rambling which amused Izuku to some extent. My name's Ochako Uraraka, she spoke, and Izuku blushed, receiving her name. Uraraka-sen, he whispered, and she nodded.
Yep.
Don't wear it out, she exclaimed before turning slightly red, looking at him, and thank you for saving me back in the practical exam. She began, and Izuku silently gasped in remembrance. I'm not sure if I could have escaped from that robot. I think… She looked away, brushing her hair with her hand. I think you really saved my life back then, so… Thank you, Izuku. Don't. Ochako looked back at him, to see the boy trembling. Don't thank me. I've only done what a hero would have done at that moment. Izuku? Ochako asked, noticing his sorrowful tone, until he noticed his cheeks were shining, which meant, why are you crying? Ochako asked, concerned, as the man immediately moved his arm to wipe the tears away. Because, he spoke, his voice in anguish, I'm not a hero. I'm just a really, really lucky person. He spoke with bated breaths, and Ochako was unsure what he was saying. But now, my luck's all. He didn't finish that statement, as he trembled more ferociously. Izuku, how many points did you get in that exam? She asked with a bit of worry in her voice, and Izuku shook his head and breathed deeply. 18 points. Izuku firmly responded, and Ochako winced before smiling. That's okay. Because I've talked with the teachers myself. She spoke, surprising Izuku. I asked them to give some of my points to you, and they said that wasn't needed. So surely you must have passed. Do you know for sure? Did they say yes or no to you about me? About if I passed? Izuku quizzed Ochako, and she reeled back slightly, not giving an answer for a few moments. No, they didn't. Ochako spoke, and Izuku nodded. Then it's the same. Izuku spoke, looking down at the ground. The same as me. When I asked the teachers if my score would be enough, they all said some ambiguous answer. Then you shouldn't give up so easily.
But…
Izuku felt more tears, felt more frustrated with himself at being so sad and pathetic in front of this girl, but he was just so broken over today, broken and confused about he wanted to be. I asked the teacher that gave me my written exam, just him and me in a room together, after I finished the exam. But I must. What you did for me, Ida's words rang in his head, was a heroic act, and I respect that. I asked him if my points were enough to get into you, and he laughed, told me that 18 points wasn't enough to be even in the top 500. Izuku exclaimed, his frustration leaking out through his voice, and Ochako could only watch in silence as the man that saved her broke down. Even though I tried so hard to make it happen. Izuku's eyes were clouded with misery, and it was shown in his voice. To have a pro-hero laugh at me, at my dreams, like that. I almost don't want to be a hero anymore. Don't say that. Ochako suddenly exclaimed, catching Izuku off guard at her sudden voice. He felt his frustration leave him at that moment, when he noticed she was crying, and he was shocked. You'll make it. Ochako spoke firmly, and for a second, Izuku felt that drive to be renewed a return after being gone for so long. You'll make it, because heroes were made here. And what you did for me was a heroic act, right? Izuku thought he knew the words that were coming, but was the most heroic thing. Izuku's eyes widened at the girl that saved him, shed tears with a smile, the same kind smile that greeted him back at the start of the day. That any real hero has ever done for me. Uraraka-san. Izuku whispered the name he just learned of, loudly, honestly at awe from what she was saying. And if this place doesn't recognize you for the hero that you are, Ochako continued, her voice getting rough. Yagi looked up at the boards, his eyes still in shock as he looked towards the top 20s, passing by. Tenya Ida, 9th place 52 villain points 9 rescue points. And to believe, I told you not to doubt yourself this morning. Yagi continued through the ranks. Ochako Uraraka, 3rd place 28 villain points 45 rescue points. But I couldn't help myself from doubting you. All the same, Yagi exclaimed, ashamed of himself for, once again, not following his words to heart. Katsuki Bakugo, 2nd place 77 villain points 0 rescue points. Izuku Midoriya. Yagi looked at the very top, his eyes shining with pride, as he settled on the name for 1st place. Izuku Midoriya, 1st place 18 villain points 60 rescue points. This will be a mistake. His wrists tightening, Yagi grinned to himself. That I won't be making again. Then, Ochako, her tears running freely, her face red from the emotions she felt. This place really shouldn't call itself the #1 school for heroes in the first place. Izuku felt grounded onto the floor, his heart shaken by the sincerity of the words this girl was saying, as he found the courage to believe in himself. That wasn't there before. So that's why Ochako was wiping her face clear of the tears and looked back at him with determination. You'll make it into A. And we'll even be in the same class together. You and me. With the sun beating behind her, she seemed radiant. She was glowing, almost ethereal to Izuku. It was as if she was an angel, sent from heaven, to tell him not to give up. And something tugged on his heart that day. Izuku's face heated up, but he couldn't find the words to protest against it. Once we see each other again, Ochako continued, holding out a fist, we'll be working hard to become the best heroes possible. So don't give up just yet, you got that? She demanded an answer, and Izuku stepped forward. G got it. Izuku stuttered, but he meant his words 100%. Ochako nodded. Good. She replied before turning around. It's a promise then. Izuku faltered when he heard her say that. A promise? I'll see you later, Izuku, she exclaimed, and ran off before hearing his answer. Izuku was silent, just as silent as he was before, but now not so much depressed, rather feeling hopeful once again. Just those words from the kind girl Ochako, rather, seemed to have stirred up an incredible feeling from him. And also, well, I guess I'll see you inside. He remembered what Ochako said at the start of the day. Bye. See you later. Just sounded so much better at that moment than bye for Izuku. Izuku turned toward the school, the dawn's sunlight glowing on the edges of the school in a bright array of blue and orange. Izuku couldn't help but smile anyways at the sight of the school, and soon enough, it'll his school, without a doubt. Because see you later meant that they were sure to meet again no matter what. Izuku could be seen entering his house. The windows outside were black as it already became night, long before he could make it home. After closing the door, he couldn't help but rest his back against it, bumping his head onto the wood as if to rid all the thoughts running through it. He needed a nice long bath and his phone to check up on recent villain attacks, just something to ease his mind off things. Izuku. His mother called for him, and he opened his eyes to see her approach him, a worried hand close to her chest as she walked over to him. Izuku, honey, are you okay? You've been gone for an awfully long time. She placed that worried hand on his shoulder, and he couldn't help but smile. Is there something you'd like to talk about? Maybe about the exam? Did you pass?
God, his mom really was worried about him.
And yet, despite each question, he felt happier and happier just hearing her voice after so long. His stress, unwinding at the presence of his caring mother. Maybe, Izuku thought, looking to his hand, it wouldn't be so bad to tell her everything. Izuku. He glanced at her and she had a worried smile. Come on, please talk to me, dear. Mom. Izuku laughed weakly. There's so much to talk about. I don't know where to begin. Well, we have the whole night to talk, don't we? He assured him, and a grand smile was on Izuku's face. Then, I guess, he nodded. I hope you're ready for a long night, Mom. I'm ready for that, Izuku. Feel free to let it out, okay? She spoke, and Izuku felt his face flush at her kind words, before looking at his arm. His look got serious once more. I'll start by saying this, Mom. Inko Midoriya was prepared for a lot of things, but jumped once she heard the sound's small explosions, like gunshots and firecrackers, and immediately turned defensive. Izuku, what is? It's me, Mom. He immediately called her out, and she stopped as he lifted his arm.
Pop. Pop.
Only to be greeted by explosions dancing around it. Her eyes widened as he continued. Izuku's voice cracked as he had watery eyes appear once more, despite how hard he wanted to appear tough. Have a quirk, Mom. Indeed, Inko was prepared for a lot of things, but her son saying that he finally had a quirk after all this time, that was not one of them. Inko's watery eyes matched his, and he made a toothy smile that looked silly with his tears. I'm so happy for you, Izuku. This is... Inko suddenly wrapped her arms around him, and Izuku was careful not to press his exploding arm onto his own mother. He instead returned the hug as hard as he can with his other arm. This has to be a miracle. I'm so very happy for you, Izuku. She finally spoke her mind, and Izuku felt his heart clench. I know. He spoke roughly, his voice filled to the brim with happiness. I feel like I'm the luckiest person alive right now. Next chapter. Down to Earth. Like I said above, I'll be finishing a comic that announces the name of this quirk early. However, I simply cannot do the same for the story just yet, as this quirk has developed very recently and needs time to manifest. So, if you really want to know the name of the quirk, my precious readers, then stay tuned for an update that might appear on this page or the next, depending on when I get it finished. So until then, keep reviewing, please. Even something simple like "good job" is awesome to read. Tells me I'm doing something right. And anyone new here can feel free to favorite and follow the story for future updates. Thanks for reading. Review responses are down below. Shining Star 32. Of course, I'd give you an answer, and thanks for responding to my request. I promise it won't be long for each chapter to arrive, so the story should develop quite nicely on its own, hopefully. Gravity Field is... all I can say, a late-game move that Izuku and Uraraka developed together later into the story. But unfortunately, that's all I can say at the moment. Need to keep the spoilers to a minimum after all. Prepare yourself for the comic, however. That move will premiere in the comic, and you'll get to see what it looks like, at least. You have a nice day, too, buddy. Superfamine 217. I'm all in for the comedy, trust me, bud. I'm planning out interesting interactions that'll hopefully settle some of you harem lovers down a bit. So look forward to it. Johnny Spector, Tsukiki Orishiru, and his younger brother Ikaru. Are these the names? They seem wacky as hell, LMAO. Unfortunately, the wiki says nothing about their names, but hopefully you have a source for it. If you're talking about the zero-pointer scene with Uraraka, then I hope you were prepared to be disappointed. After all, that was the prime reason why Izuku got into Utah canon-wise, so it'd really make no sense to leave it
out.
I gave Izuku more reasons why he gets into Utah in this story, though, using his new quirk and the like. Give me some points here, lol. Victor's my name. The very thing I dread. My readers being bored. Yeah, my chapters have been intensely long lately, but that's only because I really don't want to spread scenes like this out into needless amounts of chapters. I try to streamline all the useless garbage that I could find, but sometimes scenes feel weaker in comparison when things get left out. Hope you stick around, buddy. I promise it'll get better. Remzel von Eneli. That's fine, call this Ver. Of all for one whatever until its true name appears in the story. And for the feedback loop. I won't make it happen, simply because Izuku already owns the quirk by itself as a separate quirk, and it can't really be copied. At best, he could only copy the original strength-enhancing quirk that Aforo gave his brother. Avare is a separate entity of its own. Hikachi 107, you're fine, man. Hell, I'll accept more reviews even if they were copies of themselves, LMFAO. And I'm glad you're enjoying the ride so far. It's only going to get better. Like I said before, I'm finishing up a comic that'll introduce the name to those that want to know it badly. If you doubt my ability to make it happen at all, just look at the art covers. They're all made by me so far. Unless you're on mobile, In which case, I apologize. Sorry you're missing out. Got the moves like Jaeger. Glad to hear it. Lightning Destroyer. Pretty much, yep. A fitting quirk for a hero, rather than a villain, I might add. And glad you're enjoying it. Stay tuned for more. Indra Synthesis translates to too intense for me. Too intense. We've barely even started, lol. At least, I hope that's what it said. Can't be too sure with Google Translate these days. Appreciate your reviews nonetheless. And that's all, guys. Hope to see you next time. Take care.